Good evening, folks. Apologies for the late start. I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the Elk Grove Unified School Board for February 20th at 6:15 p.m. And I'd like to announce that the board has met in closed session and taken the following action. The board took unanimous action to approve a retirement agreement of a certificated employee. Today's meeting is being video recorded and will be available on the district's YouTube channel. Blue cards are available at the table just outside of the boardroom for anyone who wishes to address the board. If you wish to address the board, complete a card and hand it to a staff member at the table to my right. Please be sure to indicate whether the matter you wish to address is on the agenda or not on the agenda. If the matter is on the agenda, we will assume that you would like to speak when that item comes up, otherwise, and we'll hold your card until then. First item in our meetings is always the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to call on our Franklin Elementary Education partner, Mrs. Duarte, and Principal Larry Quismondo, who will be assisted by my colleague, Bobby Singh Allen, who's going to start us off by reading some very nice things about Mrs. Duarte.
All right, welcome. All right, I'm going to read, we are going to be recognizing and honoring Mrs Duarte from Franklin Elementary. Franklin Elementary School is honored to recognize Mrs. Duarte as our education partner. Mrs. Duarte is our current PTA board treasurer. She and her husband Justin have 3 children in the Elk Grove Unified School District. Justin, who promoted from Franklin Elementary and is currently attending Elizabeth Pinkerton Middle School. Jacob, who is in the 6th grade, and Shelby, who is in the 3rd grade at Franklin Elementary. Besides being our PTA treasurer, Mrs. Duarte has also been a PTA president, vice president, and parliamentarian. She volunteers as a room mom, helps run our Pioneer Student Store, is a VAPA art docent, and was recently Mistress Pike for her daughter's trip to Rhodes School. Mrs. Duarte assists in PTA events including our Harvest Festival, Scholars Breakfast, Winter Family Fun Night, and our upcoming Boots and Bling fundraiser. She plays a key role in organizing wonderful events for our school and providing great opportunities to bring together students and their families. Mrs. Duarte is a true Franklin hero. We are proud to have such an outstanding community member as part of the Franklin family. Volunteers like Mrs. Duarte are a huge reason why our parents feel they have a recognized voice in their child's education. Thank you, Mrs. Duarte, for your dedication to Franklin Elementary and the many years of service you have given to the students and staff at our school. We are proud to celebrate your service and honored to have you lead tonight's board meeting in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Hang tight, I have something for you. Would you like to say anything? Yeah? No? Okay. So don't go away just yet. Let's give Ms. Duarte another hand. Thank you. Next up, we have our high school representative reports. With us today are representatives from Franklin, Las Flores, and Valley High Schools. Let's have the representatives from Franklin High School up first.
Franklin has been busy with many fun activities and events during the
pause? Can you hold a pause real quick? We can't hear you very well, so we're going to see if we need to adjust those mics for you so everyone can hear you.
Hello?
Thank you for your patience, folks.
Good evening, President Forcina, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Miss Avalos. My name is Ashley Rehal.
And my name is Serena Fenn.
Franklin has been busy with many fun activities and events during the winter part of the school year.
Franklin's academic teams continue to excel. Our mathletes have been hard at work competing at local meets, and our moot court teams just wrapped up closing arguments last week at the Sacramento County Courthouse. Our academic decathlon team did very well this year, placing in the top 10 in the county and winning the Most Improved award this year. Finally, our forestry team went to Monterey and did well in the forestry challenge, placing among the top in all categories. Congrats to all these teams.
About a week and a half ago, Franklin hosted an African American empowerment workshop with almost 150 students in attendance. Students participated in activities and workshops and listened to presenters on a variety of topics. The day was coordinated by Franklin High School staff members Miss Lewis Jones and Mr. Moore and was a huge success.
On the first week of January, Challenge Day was hosted on campus, which is a one-day seminar in which students connect and learn to see their school and community in a different way.
Athletics. During the winter sports season, Franklin students participate in a number of activities in conjunction with some of our athletic events. Prior to the first home women's basketball game of the season on January 5th, Link Crew hosted a winter tailgate to promote the support of women athletes and allow students to enjoy food and games before the basketball game. The following week, Break the Record Night was hosted during the men's basketball game, where students filled a gym in hopes to break the school record for the amount of spectators present. On February 2nd, the men's basketball team played Davis, and following the game was Franklin's Neon Slam, where students dressed up in bright neon colors to dance the night away, glowing in the black lights.
Our winter sports team did really well. In fact, all 5 teams, men's and women's soccer, men's and women's basketball, and wrestling, qualified for postseason. Our women's basketball team plays against Oak Ridge High School tonight in the first round of the playoffs. Our men's basketball team finished second in the Tough Delta League and hosts the first round of playoff games tomorrow night against Gregory High School. Our men's and women's soccer teams also began playoffs this week on the road. Finally, our men's wrestling team qualified 7 wrestlers for the prestigious Masters meet this weekend, and one of our women's wrestlers is off to the state tournament this weekend. We wish all our winter sports teams and athletes good luck as they represent Franklin High School this weekend.
As our winter sports wrap up, spring sports have already begun. Track and field, baseball, softball, men's volleyball, swim, men's golf, and men's tennis are all practicing and preparing for their upcoming season. Games will begin this week and or next week. We know they will do well and showcase their Wildcat pride, whether they are on the field, court, track, or in the pool.
The second week of January started with the winter homecoming theme reveal around the globe, with our homecoming rally and game that Friday, January 12th. Students enjoyed performances by Drumline, Fusion Dance Company, JV and Varsity Cheer, and the crowning of royalty. The following week was Spirit Week, where students dressed up tacky for Tourist Tuesday, got sporty for Jersey Wednesday, decked out for Career Day, and brought out their Wildcat pride for Franklin Friday. The homecoming dance was on January 20th, where students danced the night away, enjoyed photo booths, played ping pong, and celebrated the last homecoming of the school year.
On February 1st, Franklin showcased Prom Expo, where 10 senior guys and gals modeled suits from Men's Warehouse and dresses from various boutiques to build excitement for prom's soon arrival. 2 weeks ago, students began campaigning for class officer and ASB positions, and elections were held Thursday and Friday of the same week.
Our VAPA department has been hard at work preparing for upcoming shows and performances. Franklin's dance company, Fusion, hosted their annual main stage performance on February 15th, 16th, and 17th. Dancing to their theme, comic book villains, they entertained the crowd with a variety of dance styles, positive energy, and outstanding performance. Our vocal ensemble has an upcoming show on Tuesday, February 27th, and our award-winning theater program is hard at work rehearsing for the spring musical Godspell, which opens March 15th. We invite and hope the board can attend these upcoming shows.
This week on Thursday, we are looking forward to the Wacky Sports Rally, an evening rally where students compete by classes, playing obscure games and bond within their classes. Next week, on Friday, March 2nd, our Poly and Haka Club will host their annual Poly Night, where students showcase the Polynesian dance style. That night, seniors also board their buses to enjoy the happiest place on earth, Disneyland. The following day, March 3rd, Junior Prom will be taking place at the Library Galleria with the theme Rendezvous Magnifique à Paris.
President Fortuna, members of the board, Superintendent Kaufman, and Ms. Avalos, we thank you for your time and consideration this evening. We look forward to our next board report with you. Thank you.
Next up, let's have our representatives from Valley High School. Need some tech help? All right, we're going to need a little bit of tech setup time, folks.
Good evening, President Chairus Espinosa, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. It is an honor to be here tonight to represent Valley High School. I am Alejandro Galicia, a senior.
And I'm Xima Rashid, a junior. When we were here last, we talked you through all the Valley events. However, this time we thought it would be better to show you some of those fantastic events with pictures that capture those great moments.
Picking up from where we left off, Valley had another successful academic quarter. According to the new CA Equity Reports, Valley had the highest scoring for English learner progress and graduation rates. Also, over 100 of our EL scholars were recognized last Thursday for their academic achievements. Moreover, we also have our new semester tradition, Strong Start Lunch, where each teacher was able to choose a student who's off to a strong start for the second semester. We also want to give a huge shout out to our Brainiac students who will be attending the upcoming field trip to Google headquarters for maintaining a great academic and attendance progress. Valley would also like to thank Assembly Member Cooper for helping orchestrate the event.
We kicked off our activities with the Fall Sports and Pink It Up rally, where our Vikings showed support for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Later that day, junior and senior girls played a nice, friendly flag football game, and it's no surprise that the juniors won.
Just barely.
The athletes wouldn't have made it throughout the game without the support of the beautiful cheerleaders.
Obviously, I was the prettiest.
For the homecoming game, Viking athletes put up a strong fight and went up against McClatchy. The following Saturday, our Spin the Record themed homecoming dance had a great turnout. Shortly after, ASB hosted the annual ILS homecoming dance, where we recreated homecoming exclusively for our ILS students, complete with food, just dance, and a very intense dance battle among the students.
Valley's AVID program also hosted its annual AVID Family Night, in which the families of AVID students were invited to eat, laugh, and learn about the AVID program from students, teachers, and even alumni. Speaking of alumni, Valley welcomed back 4-time football player and 3-time Super Bowl champion Charles Mann. We'd also like to give a huge shout out to the Valley's Fort Worth Dance Company for its breathtaking main stage show, the next episode.
This year, we started a new tradition to get into the holiday spirit before winter break. ILS students, along with ASB, put together gingerbread house kits from scratch and assigned them to a student-teacher pair to see who could come up with the best creation. The 20 teams were given a week to build, then display their works of art during lunch so the student body could vote for their favorite. I was so close to winning, it had to be rigged.
Kasima, it was a gingerbread house competition. You clearly built a spaceship. Valley is blessed with many different cultures, and each of them are loved. To embrace those cultures, the art department partnered with clubs like Latinos Unidos, Mon Club, BSU, and MSA to create full heritage days to celebrate 5 different cultures spread around the world. Our Dia de los Muertos, being the first, had over 500 people who attended the celebration, which included Morachi, tamales, and traditional folklore dancers. Next, the Hmong Club held Valley's first Hmong New Year's with over 200 people who attended. Thank you, Superintendent Hoffman and Oak Grove Mayor Steve Lee for attending. This celebration included student MCs along with a pageant to show off their wonderful traditional clothes. This month, we are celebrating Black History Month. We started out with our VAPA department showcasing student artwork, followed by the IWT host a Saturday soul food luncheon. Thank you, President Chavez Espinosa and board member Mr. Madison for attending.
In following with our celebrations, we'd like to bring Valley's very own Samantha Cooper, president of VSU, to say a couple words.
Hey everybody,
Welcome.
my name is Samantha Cooper, President of Black Student Union, here to formally invite all of you to the Black History Month celebration held on campus on March 2nd. I have some flyers for Ms. Avila.
In fact, Valley welcomes you all to come to our next 2 Heritage Days, where we'll celebrate cultures from the Middle East, Pacific Islanders, and let's not forget our multicultural assembly that will honor our beautiful Vikings diversity in all in one day, complete with student and professional performances. This winter has been stellar for our sports teams. Our wrestlers went undefeated and are Metro League champions for the 2nd time in a row. Our girls basketball teams made it to the playoffs, and in fact, they should be warming up for their big game right about now. Both our women's and men's soccer teams and our men's basketball teams have had a great Viking strong season this year. We celebrated their achievements at our annual Blacklight Rally. At the rally, our scholars enjoyed surprise teacher versus student games, a dance battle between the boys and girls basketball teams, and performances from UVO and Footworks.
Valley has also been seeing some major improvements lately. Go Green Club, along with many student and teacher volunteers, have been cleaning up and beautifying the campus. We came together over weekends to pull weeds, plant trees, and put together picnic benches around the school for outside classroom days. This Saturday, we'll be opening the campus to another cleanup day, and we'd love to see all of you out there pulling weeds alongside students.
Our Viking scholars ended off last semester strong, and we're ready for the next. With spring around the corner, we look forward to returning on April 13th to catch you up on our upcoming events like the Multicultural Assembly, Block V, Spring Sports Rally, in which you are all invited to come and experience these days firsthand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
We also brought some presents for you guys. We'll leave it to Miss Sir.
Thank you. All right. Thanks very much, Valley. Great job. Next up, our student representatives from Las Flores High School. Please come on up.
Good evening, President Nancy Chairs Espinoza, members of the board, and Superintendent Hoffman. My name is Destiny Clark, a senior at Las Flores. I came to Las Flores my 10th grade year because I struggled with comprehensive schools. In those years, we have acquired a new counselor, Miss Lee, and teacher, Mr. Frutos. They have gradually eased into the lifestyle here. They have become wonderful additions to the Las Flores family. We started off this year with Back to School Night, where many of the new students and parents were introduced to the staff and new things that would be brought to the school, including the opportunity to participate in school site council. As the quarter came to an end, we topped it off with the famous student quarter breakfast, where students who had reached high goals and overcame challenges were rewarded with certificates and breakfast. We began the next quarter with Red Ribbon Week, where many of the staff and students wanted to promote a healthy drug-free lifestyle. We spent the week preparing as we made posters and were asked about certain activities that many of the students would like. As Red Ribbon Day came, many students showed, bringing their cheery smiles as they, after classes, as we played games and were informed of the harmful effects of drugs. In November, we started a leadership and unity group where we discussed creating different clubs and events for students and staff. Some of the events that we have done include a holiday party before the winter break. We have started meeting every week to discuss upcoming events and activities. Our school participated in the Kids Can Food Drive, where we collected cans and donated them to a local area group. In this time, we were introduced to our college and career counselor, Ms. Farwell. She has been an excellent resource to help guide us to planning our future college and career paths. What is needed to achieve our goals. She has helped fill out FAFSAs and has made our students more aware of the local colleges and what they have to offer. She has put together a field trip to the CRC campus where students learned about deadlines for FAFSAs and when and how to enroll in classes. Now my fellow student, my student will report for the second semester.
Hi, I'm Michaela Liska, a sophomore at Los Flores. I came to this school to separate myself from the suffocating social atmosphere of attending a regular high school. With the start of our spring semester, many things are to come. Miss Bennett, a substitute for Mr. Sato, has taken initiative to start a new yearbook club involving students to capture the memories of our year. Some of our seniors went on a tour of the Sac City Community College to learn about the campus and give them options when deciding what to do for pursuing their college career. For Black History Month, our Unity team made a collage of famous Black people throughout history to commemorate them for their achievements. In March, an open house will be held for parents to visit the campus, and Student of the Quarter awards will be handed out to acknowledge the efforts of hardworking students. Prom will be held in April at Laguna Town Hall and is an opportunity for all alternative schools in the district to come together for a night of fun. This is a great way to mingle with like-minded people without the hassle of trying to attend one of the comprehensive school's proms. All year, juniors have been preparing for SBAC testing, and teachers have been working hard to try to coordinate and organize when to take the tests due to everybody's differing schedules. This test is held to evaluate students' math and English skills. After the long year of hard work, the school will hold a field day, a day for students and teachers to enjoy themselves and indulge in activities such as softball and kickball. Accompanying this day of fun, the teachers will hold a final student recognition, thanking all of the students for their hard work throughout the school year. Finally, to end the year, we will send off our seniors at graduation at the Sheldon High School Performing Arts Center, congratulating them for their diligence. Thank you for your time, President Nancy Chairs Espinosa, members of the board, and Superintendent Hoffman. We at Los Flores extend an invitation for you to visit our campus and attend any events we hold in the future.
Thank you, ladies. Nice job. Before we release the students, I'd also like to recognize the principals of these great schools. Ms. Chantel Albiani, Principal of Franklin High School, is in the back. Next to her is Mr. Richard Gutierrez, Principal of Valley High School. And I believe we also have Alan Williams of Las Flores High School. Thanks very much. Students, you may be dismissed. Our next item is the recognition and certification for the Career Technical Education Academy and Pathway programs, which will be presented by Ms. Sue Hubbard.
evening, President Charles Espinoza, board members, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Alvarez. I am Sue Hubbard, and I'm the program specialist for the College and Career Options Department. And I really want to thank you tonight for this opportunity to present to you our CTE Academies and Pathways. But before we begin and start tonight, I'd like to ask you first to take action to recognize and certify the Academies and Pathways that are presented to you tonight.
Excellent. I would like to call for a motion to certify career technical education gold and platinum level academies. I'm going to start with Ms. Singh Allen and we'll second from Mr. Fedis. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as you know, the Elk Grove Unified School District has a long-time commitment to career technical education as a means of developing college, career, and life-ready graduates. We implement CTE through career pathways and academies, and tonight, in honor of Career Technical Education Month, we actually are going to present to you 67 different academies and pathways in our district. Within our 67 academies and pathways, we have 12 that are certified at the highest level, and we have over 45 academies and pathways, all of which have demonstrated a commitment toward continuous improvement process in order to reach their goals. But before we get started, the question always is what's an academy and what's a pathway? And so an academy provides the most intensive experience for students. In Elk Grove, we have 18 career academies, 15 of which receive the California Partnership Academy grants. Pathways are less intensive ways for high schools to expose students to specific occupations while still developing their technical and their work-ready skills. Both methods engage students in learning and give them the opportunity to apply academic knowledge, develop meaningful relationships with peers, teachers, industry, and expand their leadership skills over multiple years. For the past 3 years, teachers from Elk Grove Unified School District Academies and Pathways have participated in a continuous improvement using the online pathway tool for improvement and certification, what we like to call OPTIC, and it was developed by ConnectEd California. The OPTIC continuous improvement and certification process includes self-assessment, action planning, implementation, evidence review, visitation, and district certification. OPTIC assessment is based on 24 quality criteria organized into 7 essential elements of high-quality pathways. The elements and criteria were collaboratively designed by the National Academy Foundation, College and Career Academy Support Network, the National Career Academy Coalition, the Southern Regional Education Board, and others. The work has been supported by funding provided by our 4-year Career Pathways Trust grant, which does sunset in June. The 7 essential elements, which are aligned to the California's Department of Education's 11 elements of high-quality CTE pathways and the Federal Compliance Monitoring Tool for CTE, are above. We have student outcome-driven practice, equity, access and achievement, programs of study, learning and teaching, work-based learning, personalized student support, and pathway leadership and partnership. Note that the 7 essential elements include a total of 24 sub-elements or criteria. Academies and pathways have spent the time rating their performance on each one of the 24 criteria on a scale of 1 to 4, with a total points of 96 possible. With that, we've come up with 4 different levels of 2 levels of recognition and 2 levels of certification. And in the favor or flavor of the Olympics, we have bronze, silver, gold, but we added in platinum because we moved forward. So with the bronze is our first level, and this is our foundational level. And so as an academy or pathway wants to get started, these are the basic things that we look for. We look for administrative support. We look for a sequence of 3 CTE courses that build upon each other, that then would lead the students into post-secondary or certification. We look at labor market demand and post-secondary alignment. We also look at, are there available and suitable facilities for the CTE programs? And then also we look at employment, that we have a CTE teacher on board to actually teach the courses. The silver brings all of those in, but then they actually still do their own self-assessment using the OPTIC program, and then they start developing action plans. The gold and platinum follow all the same as our bronze and silver, but now they're doing a self-assessment on a yearly basis. We ask that they do a quarterly action plan. They have evidence that then supports how they rated themselves on optic, and that we actually then do a site visit to verify the work that's being done. The difference between gold and platinum is one is more, the gold meets more of meeting and exceeding, and our platinum falls more within the excelling and sustaining. So as we were out doing our visitations and coming before you tonight, we looked at what are some common accomplishments that are happening with our academies and pathways. And we just wanted to talk to you about a couple of those. Multiple work-based learning opportunities for students, strong industry business partners, multiple opportunities to engage students in the development of their 21st century skills for the graduate profile. We also wanted to look at continuing areas of growth. And we really feel this is a partnership. It's not just about the academies and pathways assessing themselves, but what do we need to do as a district and at the administrative site level to really make sure our academies and pathways have the opportunities. And put those things that actually kind of rose to the top were the master schedule, which was common planning time for academy and pathway teachers, cohort scheduling for students, especially in academies, ensuring that all CTE students have access to work-based learning opportunities, and ensuring that CTE students can earn early college credits through either articulations or dual enrollment, as well as industry certifications. So one of the best parts about going out and doing our visitations is we got to talk to students. And so we wanted to bring back to you some of the testimonies of what students were saying about their academies and pathways. And so I'm just going to read to you very quickly. There's a connection between my design skills in geometry, and I was able to connect the skills. This is from the TDA student at Elk Grove High School. The law, which is Law and the World Academy, doesn't just help you learn how to write a resume, they help you build it. That was from the law student at Florin. We learned to do the job right the first time, Sage student at Elk Grove High School. And student roles in CTE classes reflect real world. This is from the DMA student at Pleasant Grove. And one that we heard numerous times wherever we went was, we are family, and students at multiple sites. So with that tonight, I would actually like to start presenting to you our different academies and pathways, and I'd like to start with the bronze level. And so what I'd like to do is, as I call out each one of the academies or pathways names, ask them to bring their certificate up and come stand up here on the podium.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Ms. Hubbard, and my colleague Chet Madison is going to be assisting you in that recognition.
Excellent, thank you. All right, Consumnes Oaks High School, Broadcast Journalism. Elk Grove High School, Careers in Education.
Come on up if you're in the building.
Please come on up. Florin High School, Automotive Technology. Florin High School, Information Technology Academy. Franklin High School, Animation. Laguna High School, Fashion Design and Merchandising. Monterey Trail, Sports, Music, and Entertainment Marketing. Rio Casadero, Production and Managerial Arts and Phlebotomy Technician. Sheldon High School, Software and Systems Development. And Valley High School, Allied Health, EKG, and Allied Health Medical Assisting.
These are all of our bronze level, correct? Folks, if you want to move a little bit closer to take a picture, go right ahead. Principals, too.
Principals, come on up.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Somebody should take that picture.
Congratulations,
Thank
Bronze
you very much.
Pathways.
Thank you. And now we'd like to recognize our silver level academies and pathways. And once again, as I read your name, if you'll please come on up to the front. Consumnes Oaks High School, Digital Communication Arts, Architecture, Design, Engineering, Medical Careers, and Software and Systems Development. Daler High School, Childhood Education, Construction Trades. Elk Grove High School, Automotive Tech, Culinary Arts. Florin High School, Culinary Arts, Engineering, Project Lead the Way. Oh. Franklin High School, Design Arts, Green Renewable Energy Engineering Network. That's a tongue twister. And School of Technology, Engineering, and Media. Monterey Trail High School, Animation Pathway, Fashion Design and Merchandising Pathway. Pleasant Grove High School, Agricultural Pathway, Biomedical, Project Lead the Way. Sheldon High School, Agricultural Pathway, Arts Work, Building Trades, Engineering Design, and Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Valley High School, Fire and Emergency Services, Health Tech Academy, and Engineering Project Lead the Way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Silver Pathways and Academies.
Okay. Now we'd like to recognize our Gold Academies. And these are the academies that actually have gone through the self-assessment, quarterly action planning, uploaded evidence, defended evidence, and had a site visit. And with those, we'd like to bring them up front, and they're going to be getting a framed certificate. So our first academy we'd like to call up is the Culinary Arts Academy from Consumnes Oaks High School. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the highlights for each one of the academies. This academy has dedicated industry partners. Students feel they have a place in this program. They have many opportunities for students to work collectively. Students have real life, hands-on experience, and if you haven't had the opportunity to try one of their pop-up restaurants, they're absolutely amazing. That's it, yeah. Yeah, we'll do one, yeah, one first. Do we want to call up the principals?
Do we
Yeah,
have
you can get in the picture.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
Congratulations, CO Culinary Arts.
Our next academy is from Florin High School, and this is Law and the World Academy. I'd ask that they come on up. Thanks. And some of the things that rose to the top for them was their student internship opportunities, strong student-to-student mentorship program, integrated coursework, and transfer of knowledge between courses. you.
Congratulations, Florin Law and World Academy.
Our next academy comes from Laguna Creek High School, and this is the Green Energy Technology Academy, or as we finally call GETA. And they are known for their industry partners evaluating student work, students applying knowledge and skills in new, unpredictable situations, and empowering students to be self-reliant.
Congratulations.
Students, principals, come on up. Want me to do that one? And then the other with Laguna Creek is our Sports Career Academy. Come on up. They're known for collaboration with Dignity Health, integrated core and CTE courses, and students feel a sense of family. And then our Manufacturing Production Technology Academy, or MPTA. They actually have 3 articulated courses where students can earn 9 CSUS units. They have a strong advisory board and a collaborative learning across interdisciplinary projects.
Congratulations, Laguna Creek.
Thank you. Next is Pleasant Grove High School, our Digital Media Academy. And then also if Innovative Design and Engineering Academy would like to come up too. The Digital Media Academy is known for real-life opportunities to work with industry people, integrated curriculum in both English and social science, and skills that transfer to real-life connections. Our Innovative Design and Engineering Academy offers student portfolios with career choices, cross-curricular integrated projects at 3 grade levels, and strong and involved core and CTE teacher teams.
Congratulations, Pleasant Grove.
Next is Sheldon, our Biotechnology Academy. Some of the highlights for Sheldon. Some of the highlights are their students intern at California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, partnership with Sheldon High School Artswork on a virtual reality biotechnology, which is really amazing, and teacher partnership and externships, teacher participation in externships. Thank you.
Congratulations, Sheldon High.
And now I'd like to present to you our Platinum Academies. These are our academies that are excelling in almost every one of the 24 different elements on the self-assessment. And first I'd like to introduce from Elk Grove High School, the Sustainable Agricultural Green Education Academy, also known as SAGE. They actually have 3 separate ag pathways. Their students learn transferable skills. 80% of their students receive work-based learning experiences, and they have very committed employer partners. Our other academy from Elk Grove High School is the Technology and Digital Arts Academy. You want to do them then? We'll do them. Great, thank you.
Congratulations, Sage.
Okay, next would be the Technology and Digital Arts Academy, one that is affectionately called TADA. They have 2 separate arts, media, and entertainment pathways. They're excellent at looping. They're core teachers. They do real-world group projects in interdisciplinary units of instruction, and their students work with businesses on design projects. I'd next like to call up Florin High School, the Agriculture Technology Academy. At Florin High School, they have 4 separate ag pathways. They have industry-based curriculum, a wide variety of work-based learning experience. They utilize the National Ag Experience Tracker for students' personal learning plan, which you'll have to ask them more about that. It's pretty amazing. Keeps track of all the students' work experience. Thank you.
Congrats, Florin High School.
And last but not least, I'd like to invite up Design and Technology Academy from Monterey Trail High School, also known as DATA. They have 3 CTE pathways within 2 industry sectors. They have a very strong student-ran organization and leadership program. They collaborate with business partners constantly, and they work on problem-based learning that integrates core with CTE.
Congratulations, Zeta.
So from all of us, we'd really like to thank the board for your continued support with our academies and pathways.
Thank you, Ms. Hubbard. We're now moving on to motions and resolutions. But of course, don't go too far, Ms. Larson. She has the next item. Give him a little bit. Oh, just kidding. Different Sue. All right. Yeah, the right Sue. Thank you. Next up is Arts Education Month, and we can give a few minutes to clear the room.
Yeah, give it
A
a
minute or two.
I'll start on your cue. Fine.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Ms. Larson.
Good evening, President Chávez Espinosa, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. I have the pleasure this evening of sharing with you 2 of the 5 resolutions that are on the agenda this evening. The first is for the month of March. It has been designated as Arts Education Month by the state of California. The role of visual and performing arts in the education of all students in California schools was firmly established with the passing of State Board of Education policy on arts education in July of 1989. To support this policy, the State Board has again declared March as Arts Education Month, a time to celebrate the arts in our schools. Arts Education Month provides districts and schools with the opportunity to develop special activities and celebrations to focus on the value of the arts for all students and to give recognition to outstanding young artists. It also provides a vehicle by which community support for arts education can be generated. I respectfully ask the board to recognize March of 2018 as Arts Education Month.
like to call for a motion to adopt resolution number 50 designating March 2018 as Arts Education Month.
Move adoption of resolution number 50.
Moved by Mr. Porcina, seconded by Mr. Madison. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Very good. Next up is the month of March for National Women's History Month. Throughout the year, elementary and secondary teachers use pieces of literature where women assume traditional and non-traditional professional roles. In their classroom instruction, teachers also use novels written by female authors. In the areas of mathematics and science, information is shared throughout the year about famous female mathematicians and scientists. Staff members at school sites are careful to provide information about women in all roles in our society, drawing students' attention to the noted as well as the underrepresented contributions that women have provided historically and in modern times. By designating 1 month with a focus on women's history, the Board of Education has the opportunity to communicate the value of such instruction. Respectfully ask that the Board recognize March 2018 as National Women's History Month.
I'd like to call for a motion to adopt resolution number 51 designating March 2018 as National Women's History Month. Bless you. We'll take that as a motion. We'll take that as a motion, Ms. Singh Allen. And I heard a second. And I heard a second from Dr. Martinez O'Leary. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Measure passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Next up, Mr. Don Ross is going to present the resolution for World Rare Disease Day.
Good evening, President Charez Espinoza, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, Ms. Avalos. The Board of Education is requested to recognize February 28, 2018 as World Rare Disease Day. The 11th annual World Rare Disease Day is observed the last day of February. On this day, various activities take place around the world, recognizing that 80% of rare diseases have identified genetic origins and 50% of rare diseases touch children. The goals of this observance within the district are to generate curiosity in students on the topics of rare diseases and encourage them to take interest in new fields of science and medicine, to promote awareness and understanding and create compassion for other people with rare diseases, to join in a global partnership supporting the search for ways in improving the lives of those affected by rare diseases. I ask the board to adopt this resolution and declare district support for this worldwide campaign in creating awareness of rare diseases.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I'd like to call for a motion to adopt resolution number 56, which recognizes February 28, 2018 as World Rare Disease Day.
Move adoption of resolution 56.
Moved by Mr. Forcina, seconded by Ms. Albiani. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Measure passes unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. Next, Ms. Michelle Drake will present a resolution on National Nutrition Month.
President Charez Espinoza, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, Ms. Avalos, good evening. I'm here this evening to ask that March be designated National Nutrition Month. This is sponsored annually by the American Dietetic Association and Food and Nutrition Services. This year's theme is Go Further with Food, and the benefits of National Nutrition Month is that it encourages families to achieve the numerous benefits that healthy eating habits offer. But it also urges us to find ways to cut back on food waste, learning how to manage food resources at home, help us to go further not only in saving nutrients, but also in saving money. So I respectfully ask that March be deemed National Nutrition Month.
Thank you, Ms. Drake. I'd like to call for a motion to adopt resolution number 54, designating the month of March as National Nutrition Month. Moved by Mr. Madison, seconded by Mr. Pettis. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Measure passes. Thank you. Our last resolution of the day will be presented by Ms. Pinkerton, and it pertains to citizenship and civic learning.
Good evening, Board President Ms. Charez Espinoza, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. So tonight I'm here because it's the goal of Elk Grove Unified School District to prepare all of our students for college, career, and civic life to be model citizens, contribute to the sixth most powerful economy in the world, that being California. So I'd like to respectfully ask the Board of Education to adopt the citizenship and civic learning resolution because schools are a critical place for students to develop the civic knowledge, skills, and values needed to effectively participate in our democracy by having classroom instruction in government, history, law, and democracy, plus discussions of current events, service learning, extracurricular and co-curricular activities, student voice in school governance, and simulations of democratic processes.
Thank you, Ms. Pinkerton. I'd like to call for a motion to adopt resolution number 57, where the Elk Grove Unified School District recognizes the importance of civic engagement opportunities to benefit all students. Moved by Ms. Singh Allen, seconded by Mr. Bettis. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pinkerton. Our next item is public comment. I have one speaker card, and that is Kimberly Moore. Please come on up. Just to remind you, Ms. Moore, you will have 3 minutes.
I'd like to request that the board look at the non-reelect list and the credentials of the teachers let go this year. The non-reelect option has significantly affected people's lives. Mr. Our livelihood, credential, and our professional reputation. In 2016, you actively and publicly recruited experienced teachers from outside the district. And I felt was wrong. Certainly value the benefits that experienced teachers bring to the classroom, and we are hopeful that this will be another enticement among many others we have to offer to attract a wave of seasoned professionals to our district. Well, it worked. Not a bunch of us. At the non-reelect meeting, there were multiple teachers with over 10 years of experience. But now we're banned from outgoing in any position. A district that actively recruited us and said they valued what we offered. Those of us lucky enough to get evaluations met standards in all classroom and student learning criteria. But since the probationary, because we're new to your district, that doesn't matter. An experience common to all of us was harassment, fear, and hostility from outgoing veterans. Teachers from outside the districts have different methodologies and philosophies. Your teachers were not open to discussion or a blending of those philosophies. They made excuses that veteran teachers don't need mentorship. I don't know the protocols of my new school. When I did the wrong thing, I was not addressed by my peers. They would go to the administration, or they would go over my head, essentially. At other schools, they were talking behind people's backs, spreading rumors, and in some cases telling flat-out lies. We were involved in a hostile environment, contrary to what Elk Grove portrayed in the recruitment process. You also have moved up your hiring process, which means moving up your firing process. Schools don't get 2 years to evaluate us, and we don't get 2 years to make the transition. Yet, we now have 4 months left to work, but we're expected to maintain our professionalism and commitment when we know we're not coming back. We're not able to work in your district in any way. This non-reelect option has significantly impacted a lot of people's lives. It's threatened our livelihood, our credential, and our professional reputation. Even though we're perhaps not a good fit at the school we're at, you've now eliminated the largest district in California from our help. What you've created is a group of veteran teachers that will be honest about their Elk Grove experience and how they were treated as experienced and innovative educators that then got cut off. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one more speaker slip, Ms. Florin Pryor.
Good evening. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Ms. Pryor.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you once again, President Espinosa, Superintendent Hoffman, and the board. I love the fact that you have so many academies and so many CTE programs in that were introduced tonight or we were made aware of, I would like to know specifically how many black students you have in those programs. So if there's some sort of information that Black Youth Leadership Project can get regarding those specific academies and CTE programs that are available, and then what type of recruitment process is in place to make sure these opportunities are equitably distributed amongst your student body. So if we could get that information, that'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Superintendent. You'll direct somebody to follow up with Ms. Pryor. All right, no more speaker slips, so I'm going to close public comment and move on to the consent agenda. I'd like to call for a motion on the consent agenda. She was reaching for it.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and second on items 1 through 19. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. And now Mr. Cerruti is going to present an LCAP update.
Good evening, President Chair Espinoza, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. Ms. Lowry and I appreciate the opportunity to join you this evening to provide the results of this year's LCAP needs analysis. I'll do the first portion of the presentation and turn it over to Ms. Lowry. She and her staff do an incredible job in coordinating this with all of our school sites, as well as collaborating with research and evaluation on this important work. So what we'll be doing this evening is we'll be reviewing the stakeholder feedback process, and then what we'll do is we'll examine some of the needs analysis survey results, and that's what Sanja will share with you, and then she's going to share with you the comparison between the needs analysis that was conducted. It's always a bit of a year behind. We did it last year for this year, we do it this year for next year, and we'll be able to compare and see how the results turn out. We align all of our work with our learning system, graphically represented through E4. And then that translates into, we align that to the 8 state priorities. We always post that for folks as a reminder. We build our LCAP around those 8 state priorities. And then as everyone knows, we have 4 strategic goals in our district. Those strategic goals remain, and one of the things we'll want to be looking at is when we see the results of the needs analysis, do those goals encompass all of those areas of needs analysis, because those goals aren't necessarily static. We examine those each and every year to make sure that they have us aligned to and focusing on the right work. This is a snapshot of all the groups that we elicit our feedback from, and just as a reminder, there's a couple of different components that's written into the LCAP legislative language, and they use the term consultation, and that is the work that we do up front. They're consulting with us, and what that means is they're giving us, engaging in the needs analysis work. The feedback and the opportunity to provide direct feedback and question is what takes place in the spring, and Ms. Lowry and Ms. Larson collaborate on that as we bring our district advisory committee as well as our district English learner advisory committees together, and at that point in time they actually look at our draft LCAP and provide feedback. So I just want to remind folks of our overall process and how we engage our stakeholders in the process. And just a quick analysis of what a needs analysis is, and that is it's a database way of knowing precisely what's needed. And so I won't go into it in detail. We use what's termed the decision-making model, a continuous improvement process that we use with considerable fidelity. And that's really where we're looking at what's essential in this process is being able to do a gap analysis process. And so in the fall, our schools receive data of all the key performance indicators and how those schools did in terms of those key performance indicators, and that gives an indication of where they are currently benched. Then they compare that to where they want to be, and that's the gap. And then they engage in a process of analyzing what's causing that level of gap. And as a reminder, the gap could be, a gap may not be present if you were exactly where your measure was supposed to be, but the gap could also be positive or negative. And so the results could be higher than what you expected, or they could be lower, but nonetheless, you're analyzing the cause for that level of performance. And if there is a need to continue to improve, then you're trying to mitigate or eliminate those causes, and that's how money is spent, that's how programs are designed. So that's the process that we go through in terms of determining what our ultimate needs analysis are. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sanja. This is the example of the actual needs analysis survey we did, and she's going to walk you through the remainder of the presentation. Sanja.
So just to elaborate a little further, this snapshot of the survey contains 3 parts, A, B, and C. The A and B information is specific to those 8 state priorities that Mr. Cerruti explained earlier. And Part C is really all about the open-ended responses. It's where our stakeholders have an opportunity to just share their ideas, comments, or suggestions about our work. And this survey is designed to collect feedback from all stakeholders. So we gathered feedback from parents, teachers, administrators, students, and a category called other staff. So looking at this next slide here, this is an example or sampling of our needs analysis meetings. Particularly, this is indicative of the kinds of meetings that we have here at district office. And what I'd like to highlight here is that this does not include all of the many meetings that are happening out at our school sites where schools themselves are gathering feedback from stakeholders within their own school communities. And so taking a look at some initial survey results, what we have here are the results from stakeholder participation by group. And as I explained before, parents, teachers, administrators, students, and other staff. And so as you can see here, those numbers add up to over 10,000 responses that we received back this year. And then taking a look, we call this the messy slide. A lot of information, and really what it's about, we asked our stakeholders, what are the 8 state priorities would you classify as the highest priority of need to allocate resources here in Elk Grove? And so those numbers that you see under basic services, student achievement, and student engagement, those were our top 3 vote getters for this year.
Sandra, may I stop you? Were there any
Absolutely.
definitions provided? For example, like what does basic services mean?
Yeah, there was a slight difference between last year and this year. This year we added a little blurb for the 8 state priorities, and I would say that last year basic services wasn't defined as well, and we anticipate is why we've seen a little bit of a spike in that category. So these next several slides are specific to some of the questions that are in that section B of the survey itself. And so this first question says, students have access to subjects they need to prepare for high school or college. And so in this area here, we're looking at the numbers disaggregated once again by those 6 subgroups. And then moving on to the next question. Students receive timely and meaningful feedback on their academic growth and progress. And so when we take a look at this slide, you can see the difference. The respondents either said they agree or strongly agree with each of these kinds of questions. Then in this next question, students feel safe and connected to school. And then environments are welcoming and accepting to all cultures. And each of this data is broken down to the actual number of respondents that responded to this question itself. Um, and so how we total this is basically the denominator for the percentage. It includes all of the responses. And in this last one, families receive ongoing communication to participate and engage. And you can see the differences there between students versus parents or even administrators. In this next slide here, what I'd like to share with you first off is that all of the data that we collected from the survey is compiled along with those open-ended responses in Part C of the survey. In that particular Part C portion of the survey, of those 10,000 or more surveys that were filled out, we received over 5,000 comments, ideas, or suggestions from our stakeholders. So it was a lot to delve into in terms of deciphering what our community is trying to share with us. And so we utilize a process where we have analysts in research and evaluation to go through all of the comments. And we take all the comments, categorize them. I do a little further analysis and put them into what we call themes. And so that's sort of what you have here. These are our emerging themes and common interests from those open-ended responses from those 5,000 either comments, ideas, and suggestions from our stakeholders. And just to highlight this a little more, what we have here is from all of the surveys that we collected. And so when we take a look at this list, there were 13 emerging themes that resonated from this year's needs analysis process. And then looking at this next 2 slides, what you will see is based on all the feedback we received from the different stakeholder groups from the last 2 years. So these are the needs analysis results from 16-17, and then once again from 17-18. So this shows a comparison and additionally the changes from last year to this school year. As you can see, the results are very similar in this first portion of the results, but looking at this second portion here, what's in the red is additional. So these are some additional ideas that emerged this year. That's what's highlighted in red. So I'm going to go back to that here 1 second. So looking at this slide, instructional support all the way to safe and secure, we heard the same kinds of ideas from our stakeholders. And then college and career all the way down to educational equity, we heard very similar ideas. What was different? People spoke about access. They spoke about promoting diversity and cultural responsiveness. We heard that a lot in the language. And then we heard a lot of student engagement, activities, and recognition. Transportation sort of fell off last year. It was one of the highlighted voices from the year before last. And then we heard the voices of our stakeholders speaking about human resources, specific to hiring, retention, and evaluating staff. So in this next slide, we just wanted to point out that there are some additional opportunities in our LCAP development process where we will be engaging in planning as we draft this year's LCAP. So in these last 2 meetings in June is when we have an opportunity to officially have that public hearing that we're required to do so by law, and then after that we present the plan itself to you for recommending for adoption and approval. And with that, we would entertain any questions.
Colleagues, any questions? Start with you, Mr. Fortuna, and then I'll move this way.
That was really a good synopsis of the work that's been done over the last 2 years, really, and I think it speaks volumes to the input from just so many groups of people. When those go out, and I was just looking at the survey. Are there explanations for questions, and or are there in-depth responses? And I'll just give you one example. Timely. Timely probably means a lot of different things to a lot of people. Is timely explained or referenced in terms of some parameters? Or if people come back and say, oh, it needs to be more timely, do they explain what timely means?
So the quick answer to that is no, with regard to that specific question. But with the open-ended responses, we give folks about 7 or 8 ideas that they can gauge their responses. Also, in addition to that, with respect to the 8 state priorities, which sometimes is a little difficult for all the different kind of stakeholders we have to they grapple with those concepts, right? What is basic services? What is course access? And so we do have some explanations centered around those, but not that specifically with regard.
Then what do you do with the information if you don't have specifics that help provide guidance for change?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, if an indicator, all right, if what I was indicating is that, and it goes really almost to ed equity maybe more than a lot of the other ones, but as I looked at the variances in the responses of people, on the one hand, I'd have to say, just unequivocally, they're positive, they're good. But in terms of, you look then at the difference between where the stated understanding is of a particular area and something above it, you don't know how you get there because you don't have information. Now you're just speculating.
I think, one of the things that we look at, and at the core of the question is, so we send the same survey out to anyone who's going to take it, so the very same survey. One of the things is, as our processes have evolved, we've seen schools, and we know where we had some schools at the secondary level, in particular high school and middle school, for example, got very active in getting their kids involved with it. So one of the adjustments we're looking at next year is making stakeholder-specific surveys that still capture the information, but the language, it was brought up before, so basic services, what does it mean? We tweaked it. And so there's some language around what that means, and then as Sanjay indicated, when they go down, there's actually examples of what it can provide. It still can be fairly technical, and so there can be folks who respond, and if people say good, it could mean good in a variety of different ways. And so we are looking at trying to keep it simple, because if it becomes too long, they're not going to take it. But we are also looking at making sure that survey is customized in language that's applicable to each stakeholder group, and still it gives us the level of detail that we're looking for. But it's an ongoing work in progress.
Okay. And I'm not nitpicking at anything, because like I say, I think the results are so positive. But if I go back and look at timely again, as I looked at what the teacher said versus the student, well, does the student want it every day?
Well, and what that sets up is it sets up because the sites get their individual site responses.
Yeah.
So these are really powerful conversations to go back and say, so as an administrative group, we responded, all of us thought it was very timely, and teachers a little less so, but still very timely, and there may be a gap. So what is it that kids are thinking? So this is opportunities, and that's our focus, is that these are tremendous opportunities to go back and engage your kids in those very conversations.
Yeah, and you see, and again, I'm not nitpicking, and one of the ones that really kind of hit me is communication. timely communication to parents, and one of the low ones was teachers. And see, as I look at that, I go, wow, that's your responsibility. Like, that should be high, because that's part of your job, is communicating with the parents. So, without a little bit more, in-depth information, I don't understand why the responses are what they are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Madison, anything?
Yeah, just a few things. Again, moving forward in the last 2-3 years, I think as a district, we're making a lot of progress on on the LCFF and the LCAP. I just had on the slide 6 on the stakeholder engagement. Why wouldn't we have, with our achievement gaps so wide, we wouldn't have maybe a subgroup that we're struggling with? We have, the advisory committees, the Native American committees. Is there any reason why African Americans are not highlighted in there, that we're trying to pursue that achievement gap and have committees with parents? I'm just a question I'm throwing out.
No, and it's another good question. And so when we go through and look at everything that we're doing, it's whether or not the survey can be refined, it's whether or not the processes can be refined. And as we take down your information, there's two different levels. There are certainly things that we at the district level can do. These are district committees that we have. It's not to say that we couldn't have a district committee that is comprised of parents and students that fall into those subgroups. And the other thing is continuing to work. I do not mean to just push this back on school sites, but that's where the real bang for the buck comes, is the work that can happen at the school sites, our administrators working with the staff, with the kids, and with parents in the communities. And so that's information we'll take back and continue to look at how we're getting feedback from all of our stakeholders, including folks who are, they and their children are experiencing tremendous success, to those that may not.
Yeah, I just want to make certain it's happening. I'm not saying it's not happening at the local, but we don't know that, to look at it. When I look at the shareholders' engagement, this is what I'm just saying here. We look at it because as one district, we got a lot of problems in that area. Then, I look at, just to carry on, Mr. Fortune got a lot of my answers there too, but on a lot of the slides when it comes to number 13, when I look at student received timely, meaningful feedback from academic growth, a lot of these slides, I'm noticing the students are lower. I mean, 64% of them, and you get your teachers showing almost 90. Well, why is that? I mean, is it the question or the understanding?
Well, again, it certainly could be. It could be that there was that the various respondents are interpreting that question differently. This is exactly how and what we do when these results come out. And they came out recently, and as we work with our partners in elementary and secondary and directors, work with principals, and it's looking at this data and saying, so what is this data telling us? So there are some slides where there are gaps, and those are tremendous opportunities to ask the questions. So do we all have the same interpretation of the question? And if the answer is yes, so why is the disparity between those responses?
The other piece that goes along with that is using multiple sources. So this is one source, but things along those lines, you use the California Healthy Kids Survey, which we just administered and getting the results back. And these kind of questions go in there, and you get into even more detail, and we get the kids, and there is a gap between the adults' perceptions of what's going on and the kids' perception. That's something that's coming through. So we've heard about the concept of how do we improve student voice. That piece is coming through in multiple places, and this is just one more place where that's showing up.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, this is something, it's a report card, like I said before, and we submit this to the county, and it goes all the way through. I just want to make sure we're very inclusive on it, and the field folks are doing their job.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think these are a great way to look at things. I think
I had written down slide 13 as well. I know with my children, that especially as you change grades and change levels of school, their expectation of being able to know where they're at all the time changes as well. And so I encourage you to have those conversations. What came up when I was reading this afternoon and reviewing it before tonight, I went to a school coffee a few weeks back at an elementary school, and a teacher asked me about this because I was talking about the LCAP. And a parent asked me, she said, they asked us to do one per family. Is that, and I said, are you sure? And I said, you mean one per kid? And she said, no, one per family. And she goes, and I had a really hard time with that because I have an elementary child, I have a middle school child, and I have 2 high school children. And I said, you know, I can't believe, is she incorrect?
She is.
Okay, because I said, I know I received at least 2 of those.
So, but that's good feedback for us because we need to make sure that all of us and everybody who's pushing that information out has an awareness that that is not the case. Because obviously if you've got your kids at several schools, there may be different responses.
Her kids are in academies at 2 different high schools, so she had different
Exactly.
strengths, the whole thing. So, okay, I just wanted to make sure, and if we can, maybe if you could just look at the wording on how that works.
Yes.
That's how she read it, and she's, you know.
Absolutely. That's
And I think
important feedback.
we lost something with that. And my second thing was to suggest, how do we get this, or to ask, how do we get the students to take them? Because I don't remember my kids telling me they did this.
And they may or may not have, because there's considerable variation across the district. And so when we have a school that had 1,000 kids respond, that's because they built it directly into. So we're in the process of sitting down. Literally, I was with principals, the secondary principals, last Friday, and we were talking about it. So we're going to find out what they did at Franklin and at Albiani and some of the schools in our elementary schools where we see higher levels. It continues to be our work with our principals and work with our staff, and this again isn't to put it all on principals. It's so that everyone continues to understand the importance of this, and also it's everything from process to the surveys itself. Because if we use that survey at an elementary school, the elementary kids are not going to be able to respond.
Yeah.
So we have to be realistic about some of the questions that we're asking, because even to ask an upper level elementary student a few basic questions that we can still glean feedback from can be powerful feedback. And certainly at our middle and high schools, you can get extremely valuable information. So that's why we're looking at customizing those surveys a bit.
I really appreciate the work you guys are doing on this, and it's getting better every year. I think we are definitely getting better at it.
Quantity doesn't necessarily translate to quality in terms of responses, but as Sanjay indicated, last year I'm doing this from memory, and I want to say about just under 2,000 respondents, and we're over 10,000 now, and I can point to specific things that we did to increase that level of respondents. The year prior to that, we didn't do a survey, and there's actually a human resource reason we didn't have the capacity to do it. The year prior to that, we did, and I believe we were under 1,000 respondents. So we've seen the number dramatically increase. I think there are things that we can do, and when Sanjay and I talk about this, as she indicated, when you do this and get 5,000 individual responses, we need to be careful what we ask for as well in terms of how we're able to manage that. But we've already thought through that in terms of we've seen the responses, and we can generate maybe the 30 to 50 most common responses, and they can click on those versus and still have an opportunity to generate them themselves. But we've learned lessons along the way, and we'll continue to improve.
I think the second thing that helped us is people are finally understanding what LCFF is and the LCAP as a community. So now they're seeing this is where their opportunity is to participate.
And we have room for growth.
You guys are doing good there.
We have room for growth there as well.
Yeah, but I think it's working.
Thank you.
Mr. Bettis, any questions or comments?
My first question is, I guess it's regarding the services. I think it needs more clarification. Like, for instance, do students need counselors? Do they need nursing services? Do they need librarian in their school sites? I personally think they do. So in services that, when the student asks that, or parents ask that, how would they know that? Or how, if the question is really general. So, it needs more meat or more.
I do want to point out, Mr. President, if you look under behavioral support and it lists those specific positions, that's because those were called out.
Page 17.
Yeah, on page 17 or 18, under behavioral support, those are the specific positions actually that were called out by either students, staff, and/or parents.
So did you prioritize those within services, like in the like for instance, services, did you, can you tell us if counselors are more needed by the response of students, parents, or nurses?
Can I just clarify, Mr. Perez? Are you asking about priority area number 1, basic services, or are you referencing
Yes, basic
the
services,
open-ended
right,
responses?
right, basic services.
So with basic services, if you look on this page, let's see, what slide is that? So it's slide number 8. There's a little blurb about basic services. It says teacher assignment, instructional materials, facilities. And so in basic services, we are required by law to ensure that students are taught by credentialed teachers, that we have a state adopted curriculum in our schools, and that our facilities are in good and decent condition. And that's really what basic services is about.
Then, well, within the LCAP, the whole program, we're supposed to expose these students for college awareness, and we also measure how many students from our district, and by region, by ethnicity, how many of those students go on to further their college careers. So, that's an issue that I like to know. If we don't have enough counselors at a variety of schools, then how in the heck are we going to get good outcomes when there is no counselors to provide those type of services in certain schools, high schools, certain junior high curriculum development, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, it's too general. I think we need more in-depth analysis. Yeah.
Well, and again, when Sanja asked the question regarding the 8 state priorities, because what did emerge is under college and career preparation, that has been there for a while. That's been identified as a priority, which includes, it's that whole idea. That's referring to counselors, the right courses that were being offered, and prepping those kids for college. And so we can certainly always look at how we're getting the detailed information that we need. That's why 5,000 individual responses, it gets very specific in terms of
what I'm getting at, we just received through our reports, weekly reports, the outcomes of students who go on to junior college, CSU, state colleges, and UC systems. And by that report, we could see that, like, for instance, Valley High and Florin High, there's less transition from high school to upper educational institutions. So what is it? What is the issue, the problem that we have within the high schools that's not working, through this, we need to find out. So, to me, I know what it is because I have studied this, 40 years of my academic career in education. So, the disparities in, funding, number one, California is the lowest per student spending. We all know that, and we're going to have a resolution supporting that to get more monies later on. We're going to vote on that issue. So that's what I'm getting at, because I know, Chet knows that Valley High School and Florin High School needs a lot of help. It's different from my other colleagues' regions' outcomes of their schools. So we need more in-depth data sets. Yeah. Yes, I know that, but yet, we need, when we spend this concentration supplemental money, we got to make sure it goes to those schools, because we voted for Prop 30 to get more resources in those areas.
Mr. Pettis,
okay.
I just want to try to channel your passion
Okay.
here so that we can give some more specific
So,
feedback about what kind of
the
data you
survey
might want in the
response,
future.
we have, 5,137 students. That's only 8% to me of the 62,000 students. So we need more, response from our students and parents and our teachers. Just like what Mr. Fosina said, what happened there to our teachers and giving a response, because they're at the front line. We need to know what they need. They're at the front line stakeholders, besides the parents and students. Okay, I also agree with Chet that we need these subgroups: African Americans, data sets, Latinos, Asians, foster youth, and low-income students. We need precisely those. What is it that they need? This is really too general for me, but it's a good start. It's getting better.
And just to make sure we're clear, I mean, these are the really big, broad
Right.
categories. These aren't the specific. They're trying to take a huge piece of information and put it into large categories. That's really what this is, and then we'll go into more depth, and that's where the funding priorities come through. And some of the things that you said very specifically, we added additional staffing at some of our schools that have the most challenge. We targeted some of those pieces, and they're built into our budget priority process. This is the 30,000 foot level, taking a snapshot and getting into big categories. And what we really wanted to see was, are there some things that showed up that didn't show up previously? So again, transportation, just as an example, was here in 15, 16, 16, 17, all of a sudden we didn't see it. Now it's popped back up. So again, you're exactly right. This is a 30,000 foot view of just the general categories by which we're looking to see themes. That's the idea behind this particular report.
And slide 13, 64% students receive timely, meaningful feedback on the academic growth and progress. That's really low. That's not, I'm concerned about that. 14, at 66%, students feel safe and connected to schools. That's what's going on right now. We have that issues going on through some of our schools, high schools right now. That's a big issue. That school climate, they have to feel safe and secure in those schools. And the last one is environment and welcoming and accepting to all cultures. That's 79. That's low. That should be high. Students need to feel comfortable and accepted at our high schools. Okay, last but not least, I attended the Educational Trust West little workshop the other night, and they brought it out a news report, the minority report, supporting the
Pettis,
education.
We're going to have to save that for other items from the floor. Mr.
Of California.
We're only talking about this item, Mr.
Yes,
Pettis.
I'm talking about the next one, the report that I picked up.
Does that pertain to this presentation?
Yes,
Otherwise, it's other items from the floor.
they did an excellent report regarding the local control funding formula after 3 years report. It's very insightful, it's very meaningful, a lot of good stuff, and a lot of good recommendations. They also state that there's an issue regarding Elk Grove Unified School District. They said the lack of funding, per student funding, and that's an issue. That goes throughout the whole United States and California. And I requested our support staff to make copies for everybody in our staff. Excellent report, and they have recommendations that you're bringing up, and this survey is bringing up, but there are some other issues that we need to address in the reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pettis. Ms. Martinez-O'Leary, did you have anything?
Again, when I'm always looking at numbers and surveys and data, I think it's always important to have the quantitative, the survey type questions, multiple choice, but also the qualitative, because I feel like the comments and the themes and the pattern are really important. My questions are very specific. How do we utilize this data with the themes that we see and some changes that were made for this year to help provide action, our next steps? I know it's going to be utilized hopefully in our budget priorities, but how else do you foresee collecting this data to be used in the future? Also, I have another question as to, do you have the breakdown of the school sites? How many of these surveys are being returned to you by the school site? I wouldn't want that now, but just in the future, so we know if one particular high school is not responding maybe, or we're not getting enough student responses, then we can go back and maybe make some correction to that to encourage more participation from our students or our parents and our families. So those are my specific questions.
So I'll answer the last question first. And the answer is yes, we do have it by individual schools. So we see the N for every school. So you can go down all of our schools and look at the number of administrators that responded, staff, parents, and students. So we do have that data, and if the board wanted that data, we can provide it to you. And so and we do note where there may be highs and lows, and that's why we're looking at, so what did schools do that got high rates of return, and what were schools doing that didn't? And we want to do that. In terms of, so what do we do with the data? As Superintendent Hoffman indicated, those lists up here are really guides, 30,000-foot guides, so that as the community is looking and seeing how money is spent, they're seeing, okay, so this is what emerged as the primary areas of interest. And so then they can look at our budget, and are we spending our budget, do expenditures and programs and services seem to align with that? So that's what it's for. It goes much more deep at each individual school level, because the LCAP needs analysis is one part of it, but this needs analysis starts in the fall when the school is sitting down and analyzing their outcome data. And I use the term the key performance indicators because we have key performance indicators as a district, and our schools have the very same ones, with the exception of, well, actually even then, although they may not look at the number of licensed staff and things of that nature that are there, but they're looking at all the student performance outcome indicators, and they're sitting down and going through it. So our administrators and the leadership teams and teachers on those campuses, as Mr. Perez was talking about and saying we need more data and we need more information, they have it. So they're looking down and they're drilling down into specific student-by-student data in terms of student outcomes, connectedness to school, the California Healthy Kids Survey. All of this is giving them an indication of student performance, student connectedness to schools, and that's what they're using to develop their site plans. So when Sanja and her team and Donna and myself, and we're working with all the principals in developing those site plans, that's why those site plans are so crucial in terms of how they're doing that. So do know that we'll continue to look at how we're getting feedback at a macro level, but we go very deep into a micro level, and it's not to say that it's perfect. We need to continue to work and continue to develop these practices as well as the site-based practices of going deep into understanding what we need to be doing at the site level to ensure all of our kids are successful.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. Let's see. So you just mentioned you go into the work on a more you take the macro and you delve into a micro level. Is that based on the results, from the survey results, or are you assessing based on what you think we need to focus on?
Well, so the survey results, if I was a principal, if I had my Florin High School principal hat back on and we were doing this is one of the ways that I'm getting site feedback. It's one of them, is the survey. The other things that I'm doing, and then depending upon how I'm doing that. So if I look and I didn't get the responses that I need, and I'm hearing my colleagues, and if and I'm making this up on the fly, if folks are embedding it into an advocacy program and saying, let's take a little time and have some conversations with kids. And which kids? Do we want to do it with every one of our students? Or because the conversation about the numbers of kids, well, in one sense, if we look at, we had 5,000 or 6,000 respondents for students, and if we had 8%, depending upon how you look at that, if we specifically targeted students, that's far more than what you would necessarily need to make it so that you could make judgments that are statistically relevant. So that's a whole other strategy, and it can be, what are you saying? I'm saying there's lots of decisions that are based, and very targeted decisions, on less than that. We aren't interested in that. We don't want to shut anyone's voice off, but what's happening at that site level is, again, that's one piece of evidence, but there are ongoing conversations that are taking place that are getting down to the root cause of student performance and student engagement and connectedness to school. So this is one piece of that.
So, right. So
But
this is one
schools-
mechanism. You've got your committees, you've got all your other interactions, you're putting that all into one big file of data.
But we have made this clear. because there's statutory language around the importance of engaging your community, and this is
Yeah.
one of the means by which we can cast a broad net and get feedback. So this is important, and so we'll continue to work with our processes and practices to ensure that these numbers and quality of feedback continues to improve.
If the data is coming from, say, a handful of schools, is it truly representative of the greater population? So if you're getting a lot of feedback from Pleasant Grove, Cosumnes Oaks, and Sheldon, but very little from the other sites, the populations of those schools are very different than the rest of them.
That's
So
correct.
how are we addressing those gaps?
Well, and that again goes back to when we saw the responses that we got, we saw a significant increase. And then we saw where there were, again, schools that had varying participation rates. So what we do is we sit right back down and say, so what did you do?
Right.
Because there's certain things that you can control. If schools had a high rate of return from students, I'm fairly certain they embedded it into the school day. Fairly
Right.
certain that that's what they did. Somehow they were working and embedding it. It's a guess because we haven't had that conversation, but I'm fairly certain that's what they did.
But if there's a system that works, then, rather than reinvent the wheel or thinking of other ways, we should be sharing that knowledge so that we can get more data, because it's only going to be as strong as the information that we gather. So I think we have a very diverse stakeholder engagement with all of the various groups and constituencies that participate. I would like to see an expansion. I think a number of us have addressed it with students and student engagement, but specifically not those that necessarily participate, not student council or leadership, but there's there's a large number of folks that are underrepresented. Their voices need to be relevant and heard. So expanding those opportunities for student engagement, because perhaps, I don't want to assume anything, but it may be very different. Maybe it's the same, but unless we bring them to the table, we won't know. So just expanding those student engagement opportunities that are outside of leadership, AVID classes or different academies or whatever. But if it is built in, like you said earlier, from some of the sites that really built it in for the school site, if we can go beyond that and really get a better representation, 64,000 students nearly, so if we can get those numbers up, that would be great. But great presentation. I always look forward to this. I appreciate your work.
Great questions and comments from my colleagues. I don't have much more to add. So a couple of years ago, when the response pool was much smaller, I remember asking about the representative sample. Did we have a representative sample for certain groups? So our major ethnic groups, for example. And now that, congratulations, you've gone from about 1,000 to about 10,000 respondents. That is phenomenal. I will ask again. I think it's time to check on that. Some of the concerns that we're hearing, I think, are natural outgrowth of the fact that growth in the response pool is a little bit uneven, but I think that's to be expected. And no doubt that we'll find ways to make sure that we get a better response from across the district. But where are we in terms of making sure that we can say that these results are valid for example, African American students or parents or all of our major ethnic groups, for example?
Yeah. So we haven't broken down the data in that way. So that's a piece in the demographic data up front. We could delve down even deeper, but we haven't done that in this analysis. Now, in some of our other data sources, we do have that, and so part of it is trying to say, how do you create this thing and make it usable? Because if it gets too broad, too deep, then the engagement, less people want to engage with it because it feels cumbersome. So it's that balance of trying to do that. But I think that's a logical next step with the survey.
We can certainly do that, and as I've been jotting information down on everything that you folks hit on, which are key points, are factors that we've already, it continues to be lessons learned for us as we go. And the other thing that I do want to fall back on, because I heard Sanja, as she said it as you were talking, and Superintendent Hoffman mentioned it earlier, the California Healthy Kids Survey, that data gets very specific in terms of race, ethnicity, gender. That's where we also have, and there's a meeting coming up where each site team is going to be coming, bringing a small team, and they're going to be analyzing that data and looking at all of these pieces. So again, and that's where it becomes much more granular because it is specific to that individual school site.
Yeah, and it's a much more exhaustive survey, of course. What I would love to see in the next year is, you know, if you guys could find out what's the number of respondents we would need in order to have valid, you know, a valid slice for X subgroup within the student category, parents, etc. And let's set a course to see if we can get there. And if it doesn't happen in 1 year, I understand, but I'd love to see that we are trying to achieve that level of representation.
And I've had the beginning of that conversation in terms of statistical validity and looking at that, because there's the idea, we were talking about it in cabinet, because we could do a double-pronged approach. What we could do is we could specifically target, and then it's going out, you're literally getting face-to-face or going and saying, I really need you to fill this out, because the actual number is very small in order for it to be as statistically valid while still sending the whole thing out so that we don't limit anybody's opportunity to provide that. So we've been talking about those things in terms of being able to respond so that we aren't leaving, there aren't voices unheard.
Yeah, that gets in
Absolutely, absolutely. For example, if we were to find that we needed, you know, more African American students to respond, then maybe, you know, we start sending out email reminders or whatever. I'm sure we don't have Snapchat for our students. That would be the best way. But whatever it takes to say, hey, here's a personal invitation. We'd really like you to respond. Something like that.
Yeah, because on the polling piece, if we go back to Measure M, we did a polling of a relatively small group of people to make the determination that the community would be supportive of the. We make 600 or 800 phone calls. Was that original? So it takes a when you talk about validity statistically, it actually takes a very few number of people if you have the right people identified. But there's very specific science behind doing that kind of work.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
So we talked about that double prong because we would never want to, if people's voices want to be heard and said, hey, I used to be able to fill out the survey, where did it go? But we could certainly do both because, as the superintendent indicated, the actual N for that can be relatively small, and actually the validity to that can be relatively high. There can be some significant predictions that can come out of that information.
Yeah, and you know, having those targets in mind would really help you on both ends, right? Like, as you're hearing, it'd be very easy to, well, if you were to, for example, have more principals have all their students do this, you could end up with a lot more student responses than you need in terms of representative nature, so it might help you guys just guide your efforts a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Excellent report. Appreciate the update. Next up are two items on race and educational equity, and the first of those is the second installment of our educational equity strategic plan, the HOW, which is going to be presented by Mr. Cerruti.
It's nice to be back.
Welcome.
So just as a reminder to the board, and I do want to preface this by saying if folks in the community access the information online, there are a couple of slides that actually are different than those that you saw in your packets. It's this one, and it's one at the tail end, and that's because we've adjusted things just a tad as we continue to look at this work. And so the changes that we made, this is talking about the general pattern is the same. We're approaching this through a why, how, and what. Our superintendent kicked things off by establishing the why. The why is always really the vision and the purpose behind the work. The how is pretty straightforward. It's how are we engaging in this work and how did we structure our approach to this? And the what is the actual outcome of that work. The thing that you see that changed is we're actually separating out the board policy. What's going to come after this is we're going to be presenting the board policy. So our goal is to have that in your board packets this Friday, so you'll have plenty of time prior to the meeting, and you will have it by this Friday. So if there's any questions or comments or things of that nature, by all means, we can begin to respond to those and then be ready on the 6th. And then what will happen is we're going to split the actual strategic plan into 2 meetings, and that's the goal in terms of, so that was the change from the slide that you had. The previous slide didn't have the march, or I didn't have the board policies pulled out. So that's a strategy change. Again, we ground our work in our learning system. This obviously, equity is oftentimes people may be, and you'll see in just a little bit, one of the reasons we structured the work the way that we did is if you say educational equity, tell me what you think that means. If you have 100 people, you could get some similarity, but you could also get 100 different responses to that. And if you ask people, so what do you think we should be doing, you could get all sorts of ideas all over. So it is a very broad concept. And as you'll see, it's really a lens through which we are constantly looking. It's a series of lenses that we're looking through when we're doing and engaging in our work. So recent actions, because we haven't just been doing this work. We've been analyzing achievement gaps and recognizing that we've had work to do for a long period of time, and we have work that needs to continue. But again, the superintendent referenced this last week, just recognizing that back in 15-16 is when we established the Office of Educational Equity. And then again in 16-17, there were monies that were provided to support that work. And it goes to talk about the work that was begun last year. And then in 17-18, that leads us up to where we are currently. That work is continued in terms of board policy, framework, and a strategic plan. So providing a bit of information that you're going to be seeing in the board policy. And so this is the definition that you'll be seeing and that we are using. And this is a definition that was developed and a draft brought by the team. Sanja did a tremendous job working with the team. You'll see in just a second those team members. This is the definition. Ensuring the decisions, policies, and practices in our learning system are culturally sensitive and provide all students with equitable access, opportunity, support, and resources, enabling us to meet students' individual needs to learn, grow, and develop in a safe, healthy environment with high expectations, support all stakeholders in advocating for fairness, and ensure the ultimate outcome of all students becoming college, career, and life ready. That's how we're defining educational equity. So how did we engage in this work? So at the same time we were doing, and I referenced family and community engagement, because in my opinion there's a risk if there isn't a clear strategy to approach this. The risk is that the continuous improvement process, which has folks identify gap and cause, is crucial. Because what people will do is the needs analysis work, translating it back to what we had just spoken about, that's people saying what they think they need. I need more of this, I need less of that. And as human beings, we're actually flawed in terms of our understanding what that real need is, because we have everything from hidden bias to our gut feeling, and oftentimes gut feeling is good, but it may not actually be what is really needed. And so we would risk, if we didn't structure the work the way we did, it would have been hire somebody and now do something. And what would that have been? It could have been wonderful work, but would it have been the right work at the right time to ensure the right results? So our approach was to begin actually with a board policy review, an administrative regulation review. And when Sanja and Ms. Starks, who was a part of this, had a very significant contributing portion of this work as well, began looking and researching, there was actually very few board policies specific to race and specific to educational equity. The question then became, well, are there other board policies that contain language, so it's actually contained in a variety of other board policies? There was some reference to it, but it was believed by the small group of Sanja and myself and Ms. Starks, and then brought to the actual strategic planning team, it was felt that there was a need to establish a clear policy. So that decision was made, and thus that policy will be shared with you in the community shortly. The next step was to develop a framework for it. It's really just think of a playing field. This is beginning to provide guidelines for what it is. So when we say educational equity, people would go, they mean that. And you'll see more of that in the coming weeks and a bit of a preview to that here in just a moment. And then from that comes a strategic plan. So the policy and administrative regulations guides how we think and act. The framework ensures what it is that we're talking about so that we understand and we have a common language and understanding of educational equity, and that enables us to develop a strategic plan which contains actions and measures. In terms of the vision, so this is policy language you'll also see, but I wanted to share it with you now so that we begin to get an understanding, because it was this vision that was developed that really helped to guide the work to get us to a position where we currently are. So this is important because this is saying what you as a board desires. So when you read this, you're going to want to make sure that we're consistent with your thinking and your language. The governing board desires to provide an environment that is culturally sensitive and free from bias and discrimination, that protects students from physical and emotional harm. The board commits to ensuring that all stakeholders uphold educational equity as an essential principle of our school system that is integrated into all all policies, practices, operations, and processes in order to yield equitable educational outcomes for all students. That is the vision. Yes, ma'am.
The text is a little different on the version that we have.
And I'm glad you brought it up. That's another, we were literally adapting this late last week. So I'm glad you brought it up, because it's the two end, the calendaring, and this is updated from what you currently have. So you'll get an updated version of this, plus you'll have the policy.
I've seen other visions like this, like culturally / linguistically sensitive.
And so what I'll do at this point in time is just ask, when you get the policy, that's exactly the type of feedback that you want to provide us, because you as a board are going to be adopting this policy. And so certainly you're going to want to make sure that it aligns with your voice and your thinking. And again, my apologies for the late changes on this, but we were making them and we continue to make them. This is just a brief, and I'm not going to go over it in detail, because this is what's going to be detailed in the coming weeks when we're providing the what. But this is the picture and how we define educational equity. So this is the framework. When you saw that term framework, this is what's being referred to. And the main pillars and main areas of focus in that are those 6 areas: curriculum and instruction, opportunity and access, student-centered support, professional learning and development, school and community relationships, staffing, recruitment, hiring, and retention. And when we get to the actual strategic plan, you'll see specific actions and measures that are related to each and every one of these areas. Superintendent Hoffman shared this information with you last time, but it is talking about how we did this work. It was done with a very broad and diverse group of perspectives. It was then their recommendations were brought into cabinet, and we've been working on this extensively in cabinet over the past several weeks. This is the decision-making model, and you folks are familiar with that, but this is what Sanja did I would consider it to be a masterful job of working with folks, because there is a natural tendency to say, I know what we need to do. And this doesn't necessarily slow people down, but it ensures that we understand if we are saying we have $1 to spend and we're going to spend it in this way, we know what cause for current performance we're trying to eliminate or mitigate. We can tell that story of how we came to the decision to do what it is that we're doing. And that strategic plan that will be provided for you does 3 things. It guides our immediate and long-range planning and actions, because we are taking current action, and it guides long-term and long-range planning. It remains fluid and adaptable. That's crucial. It's not set in stone. We need to be very, very adaptable and able to adjust to changing conditions and changing needs and interests. And it'll be continuously monitored and progress reported to all stakeholders. So that's another thing that we're working on, is how we continue to provide progress and communicate that progress to all stakeholders. And this is that last slide that was comparable to the one at the beginning, and again has that adjustment. And that concludes our how. At the next board meeting, you'll be actually asked to adopt the new board policy, and you'll be getting that on Friday. And by all means, questions or comments, obviously you can work with the superintendent or ask us for our feedback in terms of how we bring that forward and get that approved. Thank you.
Anything to add, Mr. Superintendent?
Questions? Thanks, Mark.
So one thing I just want to say to make sure we're clear about the concept is it feels slow, and I know that, and there's a lot, and we want to just get into the meat and potatoes of this thing, but we want to make sure that we have all the pieces. We could have done this in one 40-minute presentation and just kind of did a as you know, we provide a lot of information really fast at you. But this one, we really wanted to make sure that we rolled out and are going to give the board all the opportunity possible to provide feedback. So when we're done with this at the April 3rd meeting, we're moving forward and we're ready to go. So I know it feels slow, but I promise we will get there. The other reality is we're going through, as big as this document is, and we're still fine-tuning it, and that's why you saw the difference in the slides today versus what we presented a week and a half ago. We're rolling through this thing, and we continuously go back and look. What about this thought process? What about and they're phenomenal conversations, and I look forward to the board having the opportunity to provide that feedback as well. So we are literally engaged in the work as we speak. We get done tonight. Tomorrow in cabinet, it's on the agenda, and we're working through it as we're getting ready to present this piece moving forward. So this is an actual living, breathing document and set of work that we're doing. And Sandra just probably spent more time in cabinet over the last couple of weeks than she'd care to, but it's a key part of the work we're doing right now.
The full strategic plan exceeds 200 pages, Ms. Lowry. It's down to 185. Because it includes a great deal of research citations, and we also have an executive summary. But yeah, it's a very detailed plan.
Thank you, Mr. Cerruti. Let's move on to questions and comments from the board. Mr. Madison?
Yeah, I really don't have any questions. I think it seems like we're going in the right direction and putting a lot of thought into this process. I just wondered, on the equity strategic plan team, are you updating the folks that's on that team? I mean, Dr. Starks is gone, correct?
So this is the team. This is the actual team that developed the strategic plan.
Okay.
Their work is done. Their work was to work up through and complete that plan. There continues to be a team. So when the strategic plan comes out, you'll see the actual action steps, and there will be multiple opportunities for our community and stakeholders to be engaged in the work. But in terms of the scope of this work, it was to complete a draft of the strategic plan, and that team's work has been completed.
Okay. Has that position been filled yet?
Not as yet.
Okay. Thank you.
On this side, any questions?
Real quick question. I think you actually might have just answered it. So this work is done. In terms of the future, do you plan to have a standing committee, or that will continue to work with this, just like LCAP, that evolves and changes, so that the committee membership makeup perhaps could expand as well to get more parents and students involved?
Yeah, when we get into the strategic plan and we take a look at, because each of those areas, the specific focus areas, the pillars, there will be actions that are there and project work that will be there, and then also what's the overall oversight of all of those efforts. So that information will be provided when we're walking through that meeting as well. Because obviously we're going to want to make sure as we're not only engaging stakeholders in this work and also communicating and reporting out. So all of that will be both a work in progress, but it'll also become clear as we start to lay out the plan.
Missing Alan, just the other piece to make sure what we do here is what we don't want to create is an idea that equity is done there, that these are the 2, 3, 4, 10 people that are responsible for equity. we're all responsible for it. And so, which as you see in those in the major category pieces, there's going to be teams within all of those areas, but we're going to have resources within the Office of Educational Equity to provide support as those groups of people are doing the work with the lens of equity in mind. So it's going to be more than everything works through one group. It's going to be the work's going to be done in all these different areas of the district, but the lens is going to be there.
Okay. So just to summarize this chart that you have with everyone's name, this committee, so this team no longer exists,
It
basically.
does not. Their work is completed.
Okay. Thank you.
Just my question is, I'm excited to see some of the action and the implementation happen. But my question is too, as far as like, it might be answered in the second part of the agenda, but like incident reports or things like that, or school site specifics relating to anything that's brought up at a certain school site, how will that be handled?
So there may be some
But I
pieces
might-
on the plan, but so when we do the next the piece, the progress. So we have this monumental work that we're doing in the educational equity work that's been going on for a long time. The other piece is we have some very specific tasks that are in front of us with regards to feedback we got for our community in recent events. And so that's the progress report piece that we'll be sharing with you next. And one of the things is we've identified a committee that's going to be working on the reporting mechanism for kids, and we're actually going to do a couple of different pilots, and we've actually identified schools and principals who are willing to run those pilots at their schools. We actually have a system that I just heard about today that Mr. Mate came into that will allow us to actually do the reporting mechanism that we were talking to, but it had another really great concept, and it's not coming to me right now. Those pieces are coming along with this large monumental piece of the work we're doing on the educational equity plan. There's some nuts and bolts short-term pieces that are being done as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cerruti.
Thank you.
I will move on to the next item, which will be presented by Ms. Pinkerton. This is the progress report on race and educational equity.
And while Ms. Pinkerton's setting this up, I will let the board know that these board meetings come really, really fast. So we were here, 2 weeks ago. We got done, and so we shared some of the progress report pieces at the last time, and then we got this ready 6 days ago, for tonight. So just know it's incremental steps, but I think they're worthwhile pieces. But just know these meetings come up fast.
We feel the same way.
Okay, thank you. So you received the last progress report February 6th, and tonight's progress report is for February 20th. And there were 3 key items on the progress report. So I think, do you have it all available to you?
Yeah, February 20th.
February 20th. So the 3 key areas were strategic planning, and these were immediate actions that have been taken already by the district. Strategic planning, communications actions, as well as administration and management actions. So under strategic planning, there were 6 key areas that emerged in terms of strategies with regard to the comments that the board had provided the district in January 24th. Of those, the project teams have been assigned to each of those areas, and those project teams will be coming forward with reports. Those areas focus on professional learning, school and community relationships, student-centered supports, curriculum, opportunity and access, and recruitment, hiring, and staff. And essentially, of course, the overall goal is to ensure that equitable decisions, policies, practices, et cetera, are supportive of all students' learning and growth development. With regard to communications actions, in order to make sure that the public had easy access to the work that we're currently doing regarding race and educational equity following the community forum that we had, we created a district webpage. I'm going to show it to you in a second. And so on that webpage, we're able to put both progress reports with links that go back to the board agenda items, and then any other kinds of information that we feel would be relevant for those groups. So this is So there's two locations where people can find it under initiatives. In initiatives, that's where we have several of the district's initiatives, such as on grade level reading, wellness, etc. So we made race and educational equity one of those initiatives. So on this particular page, it just provides a brief overview, but it's a simple landing page where community members can access the progress reports, which you see on the far upper left or upper right, as well as other kinds of resources, such as connections to the Office of Equity or Educational Equity, the Office of Family and Community Engagement, our policies on Title IX and UCP policies, as well as the non-discrimination policy. Additional videos and trainings that we're putting in there are things like Arbinger. We'll be putting out a second Arbinger video. The first one is there that provides at least a view of what the OWL mindset is. So this is what the page, we're going to continue to keep this updated. Tonight, after tonight's progress report, we'll be adding a second progress report up there. So, and then the third area, in terms of administration and management actions, in terms of immediate steps that have been taken, this last week, district held a joint principal meeting with all principals, both secondary and elementary, to bring them together and also give them an update as to the presentations that the board has received with regard to the strategic educational equity plan, and also made sure to present and give an opportunity for them to ask questions. The superintendent also set expectations when it came to what the work of educational equity was, making it clear that the responsibility of educational equity is not just in one person or one department, but it resides in all of us in everything that we're doing. In addition to gathering feedback, the principals were also asked to choose to participate in one of three teams, and you had mentioned one of the teams was the incident reporting system. So that's one of the teams that was identified. So there will be three teams that principals will be asked to participate on. One will be the incident reporting system. The other one is reporting on and identifying needs related to professional learning and professional development. And then the other team is working on a task force regarding discipline. Those are the three immediate teams that have been called. So that's the progress reports where we are today. And for the next board meeting, we'll have another update on immediate actions and things that will be following up specifically on these items.
Thank you, Ms. Pinkerton. Colleagues, any questions? Mr. Forcina, you look like you're formulating a question. Shall I give you a minute?
It's good that all this work is going forward, and yet, and I said it last time we met, sometimes I feel like there's no recognition given to what's been going on, or there's a knee-jerk reaction to something. We've been doing discipline for a long time. That's what PBIS was all about. That's what reducing the numbers and suspensions and expulsions have been all about. And now there's a task force regarding discipline. So is this taking place of everything else we've been doing? Is it brand new? Is what we've been doing before not advantageous? I mean, why a committee to deal with discipline?
Well, it's broader than discipline. Discipline is part of the category, but it's really making sure that we are crystal clear about roles of all of the adults who are doing the work, because we've had it communicated to us through our leaders that sometimes it's not as clear as it could be. The discipline matrix, as an example, making sure, again, things change. The whole social media genre and the reality of how quickly school discipline as it relates to that changes, and making sure that our policies and our matrices actually match up with that. Are we crystal clear with our site administrators in knowing how we respond to hate speech that's come through? That, man, it's challenging to figure out where that fits in the matrix. So we're just going back through kind of three lenses with regards to the discipline piece. Very clear roles, so we know the roles of administrators, we know the roles of our SROs, we know the role, so those pieces are clear. and that came through very clearly in the board direction that we received. Then we're also making sure that we're clear about what the actual consequences are with regards to actions taken by students, and then so those are all pieces that we're doing. So it's really modifying, taking another look at the work that we already have in place, because a lot of really good work has already been done. But with this lens, we're making sure that it's crystal clear for everybody. We want the kids to know, we want the parents to know, and we want the leaders to know. So we're all on the same page. So that's the work that's being done.
Thank you for that clarification, Chris, because I was going to answer part of it for Mr. Fortuna as well. I appreciate that the strategies that you've identified, I've gone through my checklist to see if all the things that I brought up and then the strands that were addressed within the community plug in here somewhere. There's one that I didn't see, so I'm just going to bring it up and that had to do with resources. A number of the speakers, including myself, raised there are existing resources and how best to vet them and evaluate them within this framework. For example, SEED, NAACP had some talking points. I'm not saying all of them were good or something that we should look at, but there were definitely some that definitely made sense. So where would that fit in? Culturally relevant communications. There was a magazine resource that was brought up, and then other professionals. So there were resources that were raised, brought to our attention. So where does that plug in within this sort of framework?
So we've been having some of those conversations with individuals. One of the things I think when the educational equity plan gets rolled out completely, some of those pieces will be long-term plugins, because curriculum instruction is part of the so it'll fit better there. What I have had conversations with a couple of individuals. What we want to make sure is we make commitments in these resources for the long term. And so we're doing some evaluation. I know Zanthi and Sue met with one of the folks that presented to us. I did a follow-up conversation. So there may be a logical place for some of those resources down the road, but we're not jumping into any of those right now. But some of those conversations are happening. And I think through the equity plan, we need to make sure there is a vetting system to run some of those things through, because what we don't want is doing somebody's restart of something that they thought was a good idea in the past that now they see an opportunity. We need to make sure we vet the resources to see if they plug in the right places.
Okay, I just brought it up because I didn't see it as part of the strands. So what's going to be very important to me is really seeing how the discipline seems to be what was, at least from what I've heard from my parent groups, excessive use of form and the disparity on discipline. So I'll be very interested to see how that comes along. Are there opportunities for board engagement in here?
So they're not. So yeah. So we don't have. We haven't had it set up to where we have. Haven't had that conversation yet with individual board members participating in any of these particular groups, but provided, because you pretty clearly set the direction for us, and so the idea is as we're doing the work, we will bring it through you for additional feedback. We can have the conversation about having an individual board member to part of the groups, but that hasn't been part of our initial thought process.
And then what about students? We have professionals from our sites, but the student perspectives are very important because they raised a lot of the concerns during our meetings. So it, again, going back to being relative to what's happening on campus, having their input.
Yeah, certainly within the reporting mechanism, because one of the ideas is they're the group that will largely be using that. So we'll definitely include them in that process to make sure that we think we will kind of come up with something that's innovative and new, and they're going to go like, that's so old school. So I think we definitely want to include the student piece there. And then I think, once we come up with, we want to have a couple of students on the committee. We're still putting the final committees together. There's probably some value in that as well.
Okay, that's encouraging to hear as well. And then I know that our meetings come really quickly, but now taking off my board member hat and putting on the parent hat and mom hat, it's not happening fast enough for a lot of people. And so it's a balancing act from doing things in a methodical, strategic, scientific way, and also measuring those expectations of the desire for immediate results, at least on issues that have been brought up that perhaps do require more immediate attention. So those, and we all have a list of what those are, so I don't need to regurgitate them here. But it is a balancing act of rolling this out strategically, but also being mindful of some of the issues that have been raised through our various, from our workshop to what was brought up at Pleasant Grove, to the emails that we have all received from different people, that this part of the work has come because of sort of what we've seen in the community. This, the equity work that we're talking about, that's separate. And it is part of this, but that was our presentation, this really being as a result of things that have happened in the community. So if, sharing tangible results wherever we can. I know we have a place on our website, but just to be mindful that there is an expectation to see results that are not just Pleasant Grove, because we have seen in and heard that this is ongoing. This is on every campus. And so being mindful of that, and the themes aren't unique to any one campus, they're everywhere. So where there are opportunities to be proactive and respond on things that have been brought up that are more timely, if we can, where we can. But I do appreciate that in looking at this, I do see, I've saved everything from all the workshops. I have notes from every speaker, and I went through all of the speakers to see if their concerns fit somewhere in here. And I'm outside of the resources that I just shared, every one of the speakers fits somewhere in here. So I'm encouraged to hear that. But now we do have that task now to provide results. So I for one, want to be part of that discussion. So where there is an opportunity for board engagement, I will volunteer my time when that comes up. Thank you.
Excellent comments. Thank you very much for the presentation. Was there another question?
We can make sure we uniform complaint policies in place there as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Next up, at long last, we have a facilities update from Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, President Chaitis Espinoza, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. We will be as brief as we can due to the lateness of the hour, but we have some very important things that we want to provide to the board relative to Measure M. Ms. Susan Bell, our Chief Facilities Officer, will be doing the gist of the presentation, and I just want to acknowledge her and the fine staff in our facilities department. They have had a tremendous amount of work since the success of Measure M, thankfully, and she'll be giving you an update on what we've completed to date, what we're planning upcoming, and then I'll end it with a brief summary of what the work has been with the Citizens Oversight Committee, and also some talk about new schools in our district. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Bell.
All right. Thanks for having me back. I'm going to start right away with kind of a recap of what we've done for 2017. And it feels like we didn't get a lot done, but then when you put it down on a list, it looks pretty daunting. If you add it all up, it ended up to be about $26 million worth of work if we include what was spent on the track and field projects. So we had critical roofing projects, and those are the ones that things are leaking and the roofing is starting to fail. So we attacked a couple of those and got 8 sites done, and they were 1 or 2 buildings at different campuses. And some of this work, you've seen it, we had it at the last presentation. We had a list of what we were planning to do for 2017 and what we were planning for 2018. So this is just a recap of what happened in 2017. Then we moved on to doing some Prop 39 projects, and we were working toward taking care of funding that we'd gotten under Prop 39 and also doing some projects that would enable us to submit them to the state for modernization funding. So that was a big driver for the projects that we accomplished. So we got work done at Elk Grove Elementary School, Sierra Enterprise, and Florin High School. And when we add those up, we end up where we did roofing and HVAC at 9 of the school sites, and we had at Elk Grove Elementary, we replaced 44 HVAC units, and then at Sierra Enterprise, there were 49 HVAC units. So people will be a whole lot more comfortable this summer. And at Florin High School, we got a lot of the roofing, HVAC, roofing and skylights, exterior lighting, and some painting done, and we're not finished there yet. We did some career technical education projects, and that work will be ongoing this summer. We'll have another wave of them. And then there were some repair projects that were not funded by Measure M, but they were necessary. For instance, the James Rudder Middle School fire restoration project, and you can see the list there. And these are the onesie-twosie projects that things are either damaged, not working, and we have to repair them. And now the 2017 turf and field projects, which we were anticipating to have completed in November, and we ran into some delays, both due to weather. Some of it was some staffing issues. When we had those few days of rain, when you're working the earth, it posed some challenges for the contractors because their intent was to take their crew and move from one site to another. So a delay at one site kind of snowballed. But the reality is we've got a great team. We've got a really good contractor. They're doing all of the projects. So the quality of the work is exceptionally good. And they should be completing, as you can see there. But that will also include the track portion. Now, we had mentioned before that the track would come along later as the weather improved and we had to have 60-degree days in order to do it. But we're able to start dovetailing some of the track work in, and it's already on its way at Pleasant Grove High School. So we'll be seeing those finish up here pretty quickly. And at the very end of my presentation, I do have an overview, a little video that we can watch that shows the Valley High School field, and it is actually very beautiful. Then we've got the modernization projects, and these are the ones that are trying to capture state funding. And anything that we started last year, we've already submitted for state funding, so we're hoping that that money will start to flow toward us pretty soon. We'll be doing more work at Florin High School. We're finishing up the Prop 39 work with the HVAC and some of the cool roofs, LED lighting, those kinds of things. Those are Prop 39 projects. And then we've got a lot of modernization work that needs to happen at Florin. So we're doing planning for that now. There's some CTE projects that will be happening at Florin as well. Another modernization is over at Franklin High School, and again, that's a lot of Prop 39 work, and also we'll be doing some CTE modernization work there as well. That one, the field will be coming along as well pretty quickly. Same thing at Laguna Creek. It's another project that has some modernization eligibility. We've got the track going there and a little bit more Prop 39 work. That Prop 39 work, we'll need to have that completed by 2019, and we are currently in the process of seeking additional funding for other school sites. There's 5 on the list that we're trying to get additional Prop 39 funding for. Pleasant Grove High School, that's the one where the field is almost complete, and we've got some CTE modernization work to do there as well. The images there, you'll see one of the, on the left, is one of the CTE projects that was finished last year. At Valley High School, there's a variety of projects going. A number of them are CTE projects. We submitted 5 applications for additional funding for CTE programs. And we just got the news last week that it's looking pretty promising for at least 3 or 4 of the projects to get funded. And there is one at Valley High School that is likely to get funded. So we're pretty excited about that. We're finishing those applications and they're due tomorrow. We've got some HVAC work that we're doing there and a couple other improvement projects that are related to Prop 39. At John Reith Elementary School, we've had an ongoing project there that involved roofing and repairs, and that's still ongoing, and there's some HVA work that will be coming along that's Prop 39 related. There'll also be some lighting and some ADA work, because as we do HVAC projects, the value of those projects is high enough that we are required also to do any ADA work, or at least some ADA work to do improvements in bathrooms and paths of travel. At Union House, this is a project that has quite a bit of modernization eligibility, and as we approach these projects, we're coupling the modernization with the HVAC work that we're entitled to do under Prop 39. And when we approach these modernization projects, what we'd like to do is, with older campuses, try to re-image them so that when the students come back to their school after it's been modernized, and a lot of the work will happen during the summer. If it's possible to get it all stuffed into the summer, we'll do a lot during the summer, or some of it will kind of creep around the campus during the school year. But it's really exciting for them to go away and come back after the summer, and they have a new school. And so the picture on the left is kind of what the architects are intending for the re-imaging of that campus to be. So that'll be a really exciting project, and that will start pretty soon. The planning is pretty much underway, and we'll start with moving a few portables out of the way to make room for some of the new things to happen on the campus. And then in 2018, coming up this summer, we have a bunch of critical roofing projects again, and there are 12 campuses that will be affected by these critical roofing projects. These are the ones that M&O has identified as leaking, or they have ongoing issues with them. It amounts to about $14 million worth of roofing that will happen. We've done a lot of the bidding already, so those bids, you've probably seen them as they come through for approval of those contracts, but we're planning to get those started as soon as school's out. Then we've got roofing and HVAC projects, which are going to take place at 9 school sites, and they are there are a lot of them are Prop 39 projects, and they will replace in excess of 400 HVAC units this summer. We've got a couple of other repairs that have come up, fire alarms and PA systems, where either the panels are no longer working or the system is outdated. We no longer can get parts, but it's critical that we have fire alarm and PA systems, so the list there shows you the ones that have been identified as critical, and some of them are very well underway of being replaced. And then we've got some various repair and replacement projects, and these are the ones that come up kind of unexpectedly. Like the Joseph Sims Elementary School, there is some thin brick that is starting to delaminate from the wall. So we need to have a team come out and investigate what is causing that to happen, because it's happening in an odd way. Same thing at Prairie. We've got a little bit of that going on there. The Samuel Jackman toilet room it's a portable toilet room, been closed for some time, and it will be replaced this summer. And at Sierra Enterprises, projects going to start pretty quickly here. It's walkway canopy repairs. Then this is a recap of our Prop 39 projects. The ones that are left are shown there. And then we've got gymnasium lighting, which is also Prop 39. That'll be lighting upgrades at those high school and middle school campus gymnasiums. And kind of the last batch of improvement projects are projects that have been planned, and we'll have those executed here pretty quickly. And it's the scoreboards, and we've got the district-wide shade shelter project. And if we've got just like 20 more seconds, there's a video of the Valley High School field, which can kind of give you, and if you haven't had a chance to look, it's pretty exciting. You'll be able to see. Video of the Valley field just after completion. There's no sound. But it's the artificial turf. And if you look at it kind of closely, it almost looks like there's dirt there. That's the cork infill. Cork. It's a cork sand mixture. Any questions?
Well, let me look to my left this time. Any questions on this?
Very thorough.
There's one question over here, Dr. Martinez-Larry.
We're not done yet,
Oh.
so I apologize. We have more. So I just would like to update the board on the great work with the Citizens Oversight Committee. And just to remind folks, Mr. John Shook is your chair. Mr. Felipe Martin is the vice chair. Leah Washington, Happy Chan, Beverly Panko, Howard Brown, and Kevin Spees, all members. We've had a number of meetings to date with them. Things are going very well. They ask very tough questions. They're very interested in their roles and doing a great job. We're still working with them on how they would like, to see the financial reports that we provide them. We've started with uber detailed financial reports that Ms. Hayes and her staff are very good at understanding and reading, but they want to see something that they can understand and makes more practical sense to them. So that's really been a big crux of our work is making them get information that they can understand and report out to the citizens. But I can assure you they're doing great work. They take their work very seriously, and pretty soon we'll be having actual meetings at job sites so they can see the progress at those sites. We did want to talk a little bit too about future schools, and although I don't have my crystal ball with me here tonight, what I can tell you in the next year, we're definitely going to have to go ahead and pull the trigger on a couple of additional school sites. I can't tell you exactly right now where and which ones that will be, but I can tell you with pretty good certainty that one of the schools will be what we currently refer to as Laguna Ridge South. You can see it here on your map at the southerly portion. It's tagged for you. Obviously, that's a school that hasn't been named yet, but the growth in that area is staggering. Zender Ranch is already well over 1,000 students and pushing 1,200 students. So we know that with the rate of development that's occurring there, we're going to have another school within 2 years. I do want to show you the East Franklin Elementary School that's tagged as well. We do own that site, and that project is completely designed. And the work that Ms. Cherry and I had done with regard to Zender Ranch and doing the boundary changes and working with the communities, we still do have the thought of that potentially becoming the new Franklin Elementary School. And that's a conversation we've had with the staff and the community. What sets it apart, though, is it isn't really a growth school. So it will add a couple of hundred seats, just because it's larger than the current Franklin. But from a facilities planning perspective, we don't see that as helping to mitigate against growth, at least to the degree that we're going to need to. And then also in the northern portion of our district in the city of Rancho Cordova, you can see I've tagged a number of future school sites that have been identified. Sunridge Park, which is the most northern school there, kind of in the middle, that is the only one that's actually developed and that has any sort of infrastructure that's tagged on that slide. We are actively negotiating with the property owner on the acquisition of that site. We don't own it just yet. And honestly, we don't know exactly if that's going to be where the next need is. So some of this development is just at the crux of potentially starting. Grant Line 208 has a lot of interest. So we're just holding tight until we know exactly which one. But I'm fairly confident in saying it'll be in those two regions. I did tag Vineyard Point there in the middle of the map because we do own that property. But the Vineyard area is experiencing growth in areas that school wouldn't necessarily serve because of major crossways and intersections that students would have to pass. The development immediately around Vineyard Point is stalled out, except for its development, which is completed, but it's very small in the world of overall units. So we're watching that area closely, but none of the other schools that are tagged in the Vineyard area have any infrastructure, any access to them yet. So it is a challenging area. Mr. Porcina reminds me often of the growth in that region, but with the exception of that school, there's no other properties that have access, and we don't feel that would adequately serve. So just wanted to share potential growth schools for you. I did want to mention that you'll recall from your priorities, a lot of these projects are kind of quick start, and high priority projects whenever it comes to roofing and leaking and things like that. We have to address it. We have some very significant projects that will be coming up in the near future. Projects that are taking quite a bit of time to design, deeper, more intensive modernization projects. You did receive a board communication about the ED specification process. That's going to be critical in helping us develop our plans for these major modernization projects, as well as our new schools. Ms. Bell didn't mention cameras, so with the eye on security, we want you to be aware that we have been very deliberate in our camera project. We're still planning on doing that in phase 1. Got Superintendent Hoffman, Mr. Mate, and I, Mr. Aroso will all be sitting down with 3 potential camera vendors on Friday, and we'll be looking at what they have to offer. We'll be testing them at 1, 2, maybe even 3 schools to ensure that we're getting a camera system that'll suit our needs, and then we will roll out a district-wide camera plan from a safety and security perspective. I do really want to thank Mr. Edmonston. His work with us on the soccer fields and the tracks has been phenomenal. He has scheduled things in a way that it hasn't adversely affected the home teams. They've all been able to play their meets, and we'll all be able to have their track and field events during the course of this construction, but it's been pretty seamless due to his efforts and the patience of the athletic directors at the school sites as well as the coaches. But it's going to be a great project. It's just been a little challenging. And once we're complete, we'll see the benefits associated with that. And I'll be quiet and ask if you have any questions of me or Ms. Bell.
All right, Ms. Martinez-O'Leary.
Just thank you for the update and the report. Just a few minor questions. I know it's been some time since we went over the facilities master plan, so I was just wondering when phase 2s will start. And then also I've seen some of the alternative education schools listed on here, but then when will the rest of those foresee some modernization and et cetera that they're needed?
So we will be coming to the board as we wind down with phase 1 to start building priorities for the next phase and the next bond sale. We're not there yet in terms of another bond sale, but as we develop the priorities for those, we'll be working with the board and just to see if, if your initial priorities still align. In other words, schools that have modernization eligibility so that we can gather state funding. But we'll be working with the board on that. I can't, that'll kind of be partly your prerogative as we enter phase two.
Anything else, Mr. Pettis?
Okay. Answer my question regarding the cameras. So that's going to be district-wide, right?
Yes.
Okay. What are the, I see, what's your criteria for solar? I see one of these high schools with solar again. So what happened there? How that evolved?
I believe that was the GETA program, leveraging one of our projects to work with their project. So they funded that through the CTE and through their own funding. I can tell you that solar is something that Mr. Hoffman and I keep our eye on. It still doesn't make financial sense for us, just purely from a business perspective. The time's nearing, but we're not recommending any of that right now with regard to measuring them or even profitability.
Has there been an interest with like community network antennas for schools and communities? Like, like internet, those
So cell towers?
Cell towers,
yeah, it's come up a few times. It's been a hot topic item. From our perspective, just because of the overall size of our budget,
right,
the relatively minimal amount of revenue sometimes is not worth the health hazard debate. And I'll say that it's a debate. And also the fact that these people have 24/7 access to our campuses to maintain the towers. To date, the district hasn't seen that as a priority or a feasible way to make a significant amount of revenue. We're always interested in hearing different ideas, but because of the baggage, so to speak, that comes along with them, we haven't prioritized those. In fact, we don't have any.
And what about the another question? What's the criteria for the shades? Shade, the little create a shade.
We went through the master plan, and every site that identified that need, we put them on the list. So as we start to roll them out, I'm sure there will be other school sites that will say, hey, we want one too, so we're prepared to do that.
Or what about just planting trees or whatever, sequoias, whatever. That'll help. Last question. What about partnerships with park districts and for soccer fields? Has there been any talks about that, development on that, and developing? Because I know there's great need of soccer fields.
We have a partnership with all of our park and rec districts, mainly CCSD because of the number of soccer fields they have, but we already have that relationship. So we have a mutual joint use agreement. They use our facilities, we use their facilities, and we kind of square up at the end of the fiscal year. So that's already happening. We have a similar arrangement with Southgate Park and Recreation District.
Yeah, but what I see over here in Rancho Cordova, I don't see like, when we purchase these particular new schools and the property, can we buy a little bit more property to develop parks and recreation for that type of?
In most instances, the city's general plan and their zoning requirements do like to see public facilities, mainly parks and schools, adjacent to one another. So oftentimes that does happen.
That happens.
The uses aren't entirely seamless though. Parks are open during school hours. Parks don't like their parks to be closed during school hours. We would require that of them. They do create
some issues.
They create issues, but cities typically do like to see the adjacency.
And the last question I have, I see in the paper that SACOG, they have a new proposal to extend the sphere of influence in the city of Elk Grove south. What's the latest on that? And
I would have to rely on my planning partners at the city of Elk Grove to speak to that.
Okay.
It did pass at the SACOG level at a narrow margin, but the work's not done yet.
so would that be in our school district? I mean,
Yes, it is in
that
our
would be, if they do okay that for development, that would most likely be in our school
It is
district
in our
boundaries?
district,
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Albion.
Thank you. I love when you show us all the stuff you do in the pictures. It's just exciting to get to see it because we can't go everywhere. So thank you very much for your report, and this is great information.
Mr. Madison?
Yeah, only question I had on the interior part of our schools, particularly old elementary schools, is the flooring. The carpet is horrible. Even in this building, it's bad.
My boss reminds me
I
of
mean,
that just about every day here.
I mean, I look at it, I come in this place, and I mean, in our elementary schools, some of the older ones are just terrible.
Yeah, well, we got to take care of the schools before we take care of this place.
Understand
but
that.
When I first came in the district, I walked around, and after about 2 days, I said, "Hey, Rob, what's this dust on my shoes?" And it's the carpet falling apart.
But particularly on the elementary schools, some of the older ones, the carpet is just horrible. I go in there.
Came from, had worse carpet. We had a lot of duct tape. So when we got modernization money and we were able to do carpeting, it was pretty exciting. But I've seen a lot worse.
Mr. Tyson, what we're planning on doing, what we'd like to do, because there's an economy of scale and efficiency, is as we do the larger projects with the schools, we'll wrap the flooring as part of that project. But if you're seeing anything that you feel is a safety issue, let me know and we'll look right at it. What we don't want to do necessarily is just go out and kind of piecemeal these projects with these large amount dollars. We want to make it a large, robust. So we're not just carpeting, we're putting technology in the space, we're doing new windows, we're doing lighting, we're doing painting, on and on and on. So we're not coming in multiple times from one year to the next and continue to construct the space. So that's our plan. It does mean that some will have to wait a little longer, but there's huge needs that kind of outweigh the resources and the implements we get them. But we will certainly be attacking.
Yeah, I just want to make certain that, we have a figure for it down the road when we're going to replace these. I know when I was over at, I mentioned before, John Reed, and the kids in there, they were sitting on some carpet they shouldn't even be sitting on.
Yeah, we absolutely have it in place to make sure that happens.
Okay, thank you.
Anything, Mr. Fortuna? Fabulous report. Very quick from me. New schools maybe in the next 2 years. What does that mean for our board subcommittee on school design? How quickly would we start working on those?
So I believe as the ed spec process takes shape, that's going to be a natural committee too to work with relative to that work. As we get into what we call the schematic design of the school, that's when the board architect subcommittee is engaged. So once that decision's made, which schools we're proceeding with, again, East Franklin is already designed, but those two other schools, once we engage an architect and we get into that schematic design, that committee makes a recommendation to the full board on proceeding with design development. But as we get into these bigger projects that aren't kind of infrastructure related, like Ms. Bell sharing, that committee is going to be actually very busy in helping us with the schematic design of all the modernization projects and the new schools. But Mr. Hoffman and I were talking to just about the ed specification process and helping us with that work. So I think we'll re-engage that committee here in the coming probably 6 months.
Okay.
To do help us with that work.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Our next item is bargaining unit updates. Are there any bargaining units wishing to address the board? Seeing none, moving on to the next item. We are moving on to our discussion and action items. Ms. Melanie Dobson will be presenting regarding district open enrollment.
Good evening.
Good
I'm back.
evening.
President Charles Espinoza, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Cole. Thank you for having me back to discuss open enrollment. So tonight we are going to discuss the results and ask for some recommendations, and hopefully everything will be clear to you in this presentation. So just to review open enrollment guidelines, we've asked the students who are interested to make an open enrollment application. The agreements do not extend to siblings, and they do not extend to the next level school. So if they get in an open enrollment in the middle school, then they would have to reapply once again for high school. And of course, parents are asked to provide transportation. We do not provide transportation with open enrollment students. So as an overview of what has gone on, open enrollment period ran from January 29th through February 7th. The district did quite a bit to make sure that everybody was notified. We sent emails, we did auto dialer, it was posted on our website, we shot out social media blasts to make sure all 6th graders through 11th graders were notified of their opportunity to apply for open enrollment. In addition, our principals showcased their schools at a public information meeting on February 1st. So overall, we have received less requests this year than we did last year and less than the prior year. So this year we received 1,479 requests. Last year we received 1,529 and the year prior 1,601. So we've gone down in our requests for open enrollment. We've had 3 schools with incoming transfer requests that exceed 5%, and those 3 schools are listed at the bottom right: Harris, Pinkerton, and Cosumnes Oaks. And I'll go through more data on the next couple slides. What is great to see is that we have 4 schools down from 7. So 4 schools that have outgoing transfer rates exceeding 5%. Last year, this list included Harriet Eddy, Toby Johnson, and Laguna Creek. Those 3 schools are not on this list this year. So this year, we still do have requests exceeding 5% from Jackman, Rudder, Florin, and Valley. So I don't want to go through all of these numbers, but I do want to point out a few schools just to show some positive trends. So looking at Harriet Eddy, Harriet Eddy had a net impact this year of negative 2.9%, down from negative 6.8% last year. So they have fewer requests out of the school. So they are not on the list this year, exceeding 5%. They're down quite a bit, and that's, to me, a positive note for Harriet Eddy. Additionally, Samuel Jackman, there's fewer requests out. So we went from 10.8% net impact to negative 8.5%. So fewer students are asking out. Another one to note is Pinkerton. Pinkerton dropped quite a bit. We have much fewer requests moving into Pinkerton. So last year we had a net impact of over 29%. This year our impact is 19.7%. So in my opinion, I believe people are looking at that saying, well, we might not be able to get into the high school in the future, so we might as well stay at our middle school and not apply for Pinkerton, which I think is a good thing. People are more likely to stay at their middle school that they're supposed to be at. Another thing to note is Rudder. We actually have an increased negative impact with Rudder. So last year we had negative 13.2. This year we have negative 15.6, which means that more students did request out of Rudder this year. High school data. I just want to point out a few things, or a few high schools. If you take a look at Cosumnes Oaks, we have gone down a little bit, fewer requests into Cosumnes Oaks. Last year we had a net impact of 336 students. This year our net impact is 271. So it's above our 100, which was our limit, but it did go down quite a bit. Florin went down with fewer requests out, which is a positive trend. Last year we had a negative 8.6 impact, and this year we have a negative 7.4. I'd also like to note Laguna Creek. Laguna Creek has dropped significantly with the amount of students that are asking to leave Laguna Creek. Last year we had a net impact of negative 7.4. If you see this year, they are below the threshold of 5% at negative 4.9. Finally, I'd like to note Valley. Valley also dropped quite a bit with fewer students requesting out of Valley High School. Last year we had a negative impact of 7.6. Negative 7.6, and this year we're at negative 5.6. on the application that all of the students and parents fill out, there is a survey question and asks mark one reason why you are requesting open enrollment. So based on all of our 1,479 applications, the highest number of responses came from course or program not offered at home school. We had 354 responses. More challenging instructional program at requested school, 279. Childcare in the proximity of the requested school at 203 responses. Other reasons, 146, and then peer groups and friends. Want to stay with those friends at 137 responses. So breaking down other a little bit, of the 146 parents who wrote in other, the trends in the other, the write-in, were basically three things. Siblings, relatives attend the same school, so we would like to continue having our family go to that particular school. Transportation or proximity to home, and then continuity within the same region. So those were by far the most write-ins. We also had a few questions, or a few options with safety. So there's two options, and we had 85 people of the 1,479, which is 5.6%, cite general perceptions of the current school safety. So that was their response. This is up a little bit from last year. Last year we had 63 respondents. And then we also have a specific safety issue pertaining to their child. And we had 5.1%, or 77 applicants, mark this as their reason for open enrollment, up from 2 from last year. So what we'd like to do is continue our follow-up actions. We do send another survey that has specific questions, especially in regards to the safety concerns. So if you're a parent and you're marking the general perception of safety or the specific reason for safety, we follow up with them with another survey. Tech Services helps us out with that. We want to continue our outreach. We want to continue our branding. We want to continue to have kids stay in their home schools. We want to continue our marketing, and then we want to continue any staff augmentation to our designated schools to provide extra support to some of those schools. So on the January 24th meeting, I asked to cap 2 schools. And those 2 schools were Cosumnes Oaks High School and Monterey Trail High School. We capped both those schools at 100. After all of the numbers were crunched, we have a net impact at CO of 271. So we definitely are over that 100 that we've capped it at. Monterey Trail, we're much better. We capped it at 100, but we have a net impact of only 56. So the considerations for open enrollment this year, for the last 10 years, the board has approved a 5% cap for the students leaving any single school to make sure that we have a academic program that is sustained and that we have a comprehensive instructional program that we can maintain at all of our sites. So in order to ensure that we have stability at all our schools, we're asking again to cap 5% enrollment through open enrollment transfer at 4 schools. So those 4 schools would be James Rudder, Valley High School, Samuel Jackman Middle School, and Florin High School. And should the board approve the 5% cap, it will be determined through a computerized random selection process of which students will enroll at their schools of choice. This process would take place at Laguna Creek High School on February 27th at 6 p.m. So parents and students who are very anxious could go to that and see us push the button and all of the names get put up on the wall so you can see right away if you are selected for your open enrollment. If not, we will send out letters the week of March 5th. So here's the timeline. If approved, we'd like the random selection process conducted at Laguna Creek next week, February 27th. The week of March 5th, we would then notify all of our families of open enrollment acceptance and send our letter to our students and parents. And by March 21st, they would have to turn in a signed open enrollment agreement. So we've explained to them throughout this entire process that it is a two-step process, open enrollment application, and then if you get in, you must sign the agreement. So what we are requesting tonight is to approve the open enrollment transfers from schools with fewer than 5% transfer requests, impose a 5% cap, limiting the number of students who would be allowed to transfer from Jackman and Rudder, as well as Florin and Valley, and then approve an open enrollment random selection process to be held on February 27th at Laguna Creek High School to determine two things. First, to determine which students from those requested exceed 5% will be allowed to transfer to their school of choice. And then also, that night, we will identify the 100 students who will open enroll into Cosumnes Oaks High School. Thank you.
Colleagues, do we have any questions before I call for a motion?
Do.
Go right ahead, Mr. Massey.
I think the report is good. I think a lot of the advertising we've done, I think Zanti and the trends are improving in a lot of schools that we set out to. I'm disappointed with what's going on at Rudder Middle School, and I have concerns with Harris, how that keeps building up. So in the future, I would like to really look at Harris and possibly put a cap on that as well too, because it's just disheartening to see what's going on in Rudder. I don't know what the parents, how they feel. I hear safety, or I can't believe all that, but it's a real concern, and it's something we need to really zero in on and find out what's really going on over there. I mean, we got a modernization going over there, a new science building, and so there's a lot of good things that's happening over there. But with Harris, I'm concerned. I know we did Monterey Trail, but we better look at Harris as well too, because that's approaching 1,200 kids over in that area.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments over here, Mr. Bettis?
On Isabel Jackson students, when they go to, how many of those choose to go to the middle school across your area?
I would have to pull the data on that.
I wouldn't expect any of those students walk across 5 miles, go to Rudder. So I think a lot of those students just go to the Monterey High School and Monterey Trails. It's as simple as that. I'd like you to do analysis of that, maybe on a GIS mapping, because that's what I think most of the people leave Rudder, because they're not going to walk all the way across Waters Park, all the way into across Gerber, you know. Do we have a bus? No.
I couldn't tell you that.
No.
I do know that when they fill in and they mark proximity, there's people also who are asking to leave Albione to go to Rudder because they're closer to Rudder.
Right.
And it's a transportation issue for their
Yeah,
families.
people going around downtown or whatever.
Exactly.
And also, it's the other way around too. I think it's what was that train of thought? Yeah, it's just a lot of those students, and even I seen even Anna Kirchgater students going to the other schools. That's far. And they're willing to, you know, their parents are willing to go over there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so.
Of our applications are 1479. There's multiple applications from 6th grade students from all over the district.
Right.
Yeah.
Depends on where the parents are going to work to.
Exactly, and that was a few too. I'm driving in this direction, so it would just be easier. Or I actually work in the district, and it would be easier for them to go to this particular school.
Putting on the parent hat, I think it's good that we do have opportunities for parents to choose if they can, for different programs, different reasons. So there's the flip side of that is it's not necessarily a bad thing either, as a parent.
Okay, let's move back to Ms. Albiani.
As a parent who filled out 3 of those applications this year, I think it was very clear in the no continuation, no sibling guarantees. I was, when I got the form, it's very clear when they sign up. It's bold and multiple sign right by it. So I'd never had that experience. I did have one suggestion. When I turned it in, I didn't know if you got it. And it's kind of like a stressful time. So you want to know, like, they received the mail or they received your fax. And I don't know if there's a generic way to answer that, but I can tell you, I of course drove here to make sure it got received, but not all parents have or happen to be in the office so often as I
We do get a lot of phone calls of nervous parents asking, did you get our fax?
So I don't know if there's a very generic email you can say that we received your information and then just the next two steps, because I did not realize, I guess I know I'd have to accept again, but.
Right.
So just from someone who's going through the experience as a novice.
So those who walk in and drop off the application receive the stamp, date, time, and you get your part back to say, yes, we've received it. But we've received multiple fax and multiple emails, and multiple phone calls. Yeah, yeah. Right, exactly.
Thank you much. Ms. Martinez-Leary, anything from you? Missing Allen? All right. I just wanted to ask really quickly, do we know what caused the dramatic decrease of students wanting to transfer out of Laguna Creek High School? Or is that something you've not unearthed yet?
If you're asking just my opinion as a secondary director, I believe both Laguna Creek and Eddy have worked really hard to build some amazing programs. And I think that the community is noticing that. I live in Laguna West. My house, if I had children, they would go to Eddy. So speaking to a lot of my neighbors and my parents, when they ask me, hey, on a professional level, you work for the district, would you send your kid to Eddy? Absolutely. And I think the mentality of my neighborhood is changing and has changed. And I think because of IB and the programs that those schools are bringing in, they're knocking the socks off people, and they're wanting to stay now.
Excellent. Very exciting stuff. Very exciting stuff. All right. I'm going to call for a motion to approve the open enrollment transfers, establish a 5% transfer cap on the designated schools, and approve an open enrollment random selection process. Moved by Ms. Allen, seconded by Mr. Bettis. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I believe that was unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Dobson. Moving on to our action items. The 2018 California School Boards Association Delegate Assembly Election. Would you like to present this, Ms. Allen?
Certainly. So you have there's two vacancies and two names. I've served with both. So as Ms. Martinez-Aleri, they're both very actively involved in delegate assembly, so I would make a motion to support.
And I would second the motion to support them.
Colleagues, we have a motion and a second on Craig DeLuce from Robla and Joanne Rankin. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is also unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. Next item is non-reelection of probationary certificated employees. Mr. Riley.
Good evening, President Charas Espinosa, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, Ms. Avalos. A non-reelection is a process that puts a certificated probationary employee on notice that his or her employment contract will not be renewed for the following school year. Education Code Section 44929.21 authorizes the governing board to give notice to a probationary certificated employee of the board's decision to non-reelect the employees for the next succeeding school year to such a position at any time prior to March 15 of the employee's second complete consecutive school year of employment by the district. The Board of Education is asked to adopt the resolution attached to non-reelect the certificated employees as itemized in Attachment A, and that the superintendent or his designee be directed to send appropriate notices to all employees whose services shall be terminated by virtue of this action. The board is requested to adopt resolution number 55, 2017-2018, authorizing the governing board to non-reelect probationary certificated employees.
I'd like to call for a motion to adopt resolution number 55, authorizing the governing board to non-reelect probationary certificated employees per Education Code 44929.21.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Fortuna, seconded by Mr. Madison. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. I believe that was unanimous. Okay, that was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Mr. Riley. Next item, Mr. Pierce will present a resolution calling for full and fair funding of California's public schools.
Thank you again. I will be very brief in asking the board to consider adopting this resolution. I know it's near and dear to our president's heart as well, this president. So we all know the situation that California is in terms of its economy. It is the 6th largest economy in the world. It has the highest gross domestic product in the entire nation of all states. But despite this, California continues to fall in the bottom quintile of nearly every measure of public K-12 school funding or school staffing. California ranks 45th nationally in the percentage of taxable income spent on education, 41st in per pupil funding, and 45th, in the pupil-teacher ratios, and 48th in pupil-staff ratios. California's investment in public schools is out of alignment with its wealth, its ambitions, its needs, and the demands of 21st century education. To go further, California funds schools at roughly $2,000 per student less than the national average, which translates into approximately $3,500 per student less when adjusted for California being a high-cost state. And we trail the average of the top 10 states by almost $7,000 in per pupil funding. That's $430 million additionally our school district would be receiving if you pick this up and place us in Massachusetts. The resolution before you tonight is asking the legislature to consider to fully fund California schools and to at least put us at the national average by 2015 and to consider putting us at the top 10 within the nation by 2025. So I'd ask for your consideration of the resolution before you. Just today there was a bill introduced to the Senate that would increase the LCFF base by $1 billion and also increase funding for supplemental concentration grants. So we're hoping that this trend continues and that members of the legislature author bills that takes the California revenue and places it into the California classroom, much like other states throughout the nation.
I'm going to take the opportunity just to chime in and add here that this type of resolution helps keep the issue alive for our decision makers. So many of the goals that we have for our students are dependent upon having the people to deliver the service, to identify the need even. I've heard talk about, this last tragedy, the school shooting in Florida, and how that directly relates to school staffing. We need more caring adults helping our kids, identifying their needs and forging those connections. So it's a very important resolution, and I urge your aye vote. With that, I'm going to call for a motion to adopt resolution number 52 to support the call for full and fair funding of California's public schools.
So second it.
Moved by Ms. Singh Allen. I heard a second from Dr. Martinez O'Leary. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And
I'd like to say something also. On Children's Now report, it's a state report on the indicators of children in California, and the Children's Defense Fund is another report that does it by state. If you look at the Children's Now report, and this is a big issue on that, and they're the ones that's pushing that a lot through the legislative process and also at trust. So yes, I support this 100%. Again, this report that I mentioned today, equal treatment for children, unequal situation is not justice. The steps breathe its support. It has also by district, by within Sacramento County, how much average per people, state and local revenues that go to different, how much we spend.
thank you, Mr. Pettis. We do have to stay on this item, so just let me declare that that motion did pass. And one more item for Mr. Pierce to present is the resolution in support of apportioning $3 billion in 2018-19 from Proposition 51 school facilities.
Thank you again. This is another resolution asking the board to support an action by the state of California. Since 1982, voters in California have continued to approve local state school bonds. With those bonds' success rate, At least 90% of the bonds authorized in that election were committed within the first 4 years of the bond's election. The current bond that we're finding ourselves under, we won't be committed to 90% of that bond in terms of districts receiving that money for a full decade. So Elk Grove Unified School District has $50 million in applications that it's already submitted dating back to 2013. We haven't been funded for those projects. They're sitting on a waiting list. The voters of California did approve Proposition 51 with the full expectation that those dollars would go out to districts so they could build those schools and or be reimbursed for schools that have already been constructed. We're not the only district in this boat. We have continued to implore the State Allocation Board and others to push for these bonds to be sold. There's no reason, candidly, that they aren't already sold. And that all that's going to happen is the cost of construction continues to escalate. So the state's authorized to sell these bonds. They haven't done so. This resolution would ask them to do so, at least to sell the $300 million in bonds in the 2018-19 fiscal year. It's also supported by Coalition for Adequate School Housing. And again, I would ask if you have any questions and ask for your consideration. Districts across the state are adopting this resolution.
Let me just add here that the current proposal that the governor is pushing forth would only sell enough bonds to approve projects that applied, going back to 2014. So under his current proposal, we would still have districts, including ourselves, who have been waiting for over 5 years. And what that means is those improvements that we want to make to our facilities so that our kids can, learn according to the Common Core State standards, next generation science standards, all these safety and security things, all of these things would have to wait for at least another generation of students. So with that.
I have a question. Does the Coalition of Adequate School Housing, do they plan to do a legislative hearing on this issue soon?
So they wouldn't conduct the hearing. There was hearings leading up to the bond itself.
I remember that one.
The State Allocation Board has monthly meetings. They're not the ultimate deciding factor. It's actually the Pooled Money Investment Board, which gets a little, there's a number of members there that are appointed by the governor. So we're just imploring that they consider selling these bonds. And I misspoke. I said 300 million. It's 3.2 billion within the 18-19 fiscal year is what we're asking for.
Do I see another hand over there? Questions, comments? So with that, I will call for a motion to adopt resolution number 53 in support of apportioning, we're saying 3 billion, but it's really 3.2 billion in fiscal year 2018-19 from Proposition 51 school facilities funds.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Madison, seconded by Mr. Bettis. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Our next item is board member and superintendent reports. I will start on my right. Anything? Sir?
Yeah, I attended the County Board of Education dinner meeting last week, but the speaker there was Ron Bennett. A lot of you are familiar with him. He talked about the school funding beyond 2018, and we've discussed things. He mentioned about cautious. We have a lot of responsibility now with the defined pension plans with PERS and STIRS out to the future that we really have to pay attention to. Deferred maintenance might be coming back. I guess you know about that, the 3% reserves that we'll have on deferred maintenance because they had left that off. So it was quite interesting of listening to him that, and some school districts are already in trouble at this point right now. So just a word of caution. It's pretty informative.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Going to my left, anything for board reports on committee work? Seeing none. Anything, Mr. Superintendent? All right. Other items from the floor?
I look for the last.
Okay, then I'll start over here again. Other items from the floor, anyone?
Yeah, I just want to mention I was, and I think Nancy was there too, at Valley High School this past weekend. I was asked to come and give open remarks to the Improve Year Tomorrow, and I was just amazed the amount of parents and kids that were in that that celebration, that they had a Black History Month and a luncheon. The amount of Hispanic kids and African Americans, the multi-purpose room was it was packed, and they had a nice luncheon in there. So I just wanted to pass that on. It was very well done, and I see that growing more and more of getting results and helping the achievement gap and stopping kids from dropping out of high school and feeding the prison pipeline there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Last week we saw one of the worst tragedies at Stoneman Douglas High School, and it's not lost on me, and I'm sure everyone here, that we do so much more than just providing excellent education, but the safety and security of our students, the value of human life, and just all of the sacrifices and the heroes that emerged from the tragedy. I want to adjourn in their memory and just read their names. This is hard. Alyssa, I'll head off, 14. Scott Beigel, 35. Martin Duke Anguiano, 14. Nicholas Doret, 17. Aaron Feiss, 37. Jaime Gutenberg, 14. Christopher Hickson, 49. Luke Hoyer, 15. Kara Lugren, 14. Gina Montalto, 14. Joaquin Oliver, 17. Sorry. Elena Petty, 14. Meadow Pollock, 18. Helena Ramsey, 17. Alexander Schachter, 14. Carmen Shantrup, 16. And Peter Wang, 15. Thank you.
Adjourn this meeting in the memory of those victims. Meeting adjourned at 9:46. Thank you.